I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me? No, they took a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from the computer now. Can you hear me talking? Do you hear him or me?
To get all of these issues taken care of.
No,
So,
they took
thanks.
a break for a minute, but do you hear it now? I think that's just pulling the mic from
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. One thing that I'd like to just note, and I apologize that I missed this in my opening, and I'd be remiss if I did not say something in this regard, but I believe it is very disconcerting that we have absence of candidates today in this forum. I believe it's so important that the people hear from their potential elected officials in a forum such as this to be able to answer the questions, to debate one with another. I believe it is very disconcerting that we have absence of candidates today in this forum. I believe it's so important that the people hear from their potential elected officials in a forum such as this to be able to answer from their potential elected officials in a forum such as this to be able to answer from their potential Repeat the question. Sorry to interrupt you, Jerry, but I could do that if you like. So
I think that would be good.
Okay.
The first question comes from Tammy Ashmore. And
repeat the question. And it appears it appears
And it appears. And it appears.
There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending.
And it appears.
There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending.
And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending. And it appears. There were probably all of us have lived in an apartment at one point in our life, depending.
Place. Single dwelling homes have their place. The city has a map that they put the residential zones out under a code R1, R2, or R3. The government cannot stop a farmer from selling his property to CBH, for CBH to come on and put homes. The city can, however, say that this will be an R1 residential, so it's not packed with multifamilies or apartment complexes. The difference is you need starter homes, you need apartment complexes for people to get started out in, and then you need the middle-class homes and the high-end homes. They're all needed. They can't be stopped. So, but the question is how to properly regulate that so it's not too much growth. Thank you. They can't be stopped. So, but the question is how to properly regulate that so it's not too much growth. Thank you. They can't be stopped. So, but the question is how to properly regulate that so it's not too much growth. Thank you.
question comes from Tammy Holcomb, and I'm going to be as loud as I can. What, if anything, do you plan to do regarding the burgeoning homeless population along with panhandling? You need that repeated?
Burgeoning homeless population.
Along with panhandling.
Okay. Tammy Holcomb? Holcomb. Tammy Holcomb, thank you for that question. So we don't have, so we do have a homeless problem. It's really become a pandemic throughout our country. But the panhandling and the homeless population, I don't want it to become out of control. I know that Boise has a lot of it. I do see some of it here in Caldwell, and my heart goes out to them. You know, I'm going to be very honest with you, Tammy. It's something that we need to address. Our city council and mayor need to be a team, and we need to address these issues, these social issues. And we really need to just advocate for programs for them. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate program, but we need to just come together, and we need to figure out how to help them because they are part of our community. And my heart is where our community is and our people in it. And so I would say the truthful answer is we would have to get together with the city council as a team and really tackle that issue. And I think it would make it a little easier on our police and police officers as well. Where they can maintain something else versus the homeless population. So I know I'm sorry I didn't answer your question completely, but that is my answer. We would have to get something together and create something. Where they can maintain something else versus the homeless population. So I know I'm sorry I didn't answer your question completely, but that is my answer. We would have.
Yeah, could you repeat that for me?
What, if anything, do you plan to do regarding the burgeoning homeless population along with panhandling?
Okay.
Could you repeat that for me?
City of Caldwell has a small panhandling and homeless situation. I am a board member on the Veterans Council here in Caldwell, and we have dealt with it quite a bit. We put on many functions to help feed and get these women and men, children even, the help that they need. We need more structures or more capability. For instance, the Veterans Council is only one place, and we do it for everybody, not just veterans. They can come in, we can give them an Uber ride, we have permission and a working relationship with downtown Last Hope to get these people into a place, and it's a free Uber ride, and they get taken care of. Possibly looking into, once again, this has to be worked with City Council, but possibly looking into setting up a homeless development closer here that can help with that might be an issue. Going out and trying to find out the reasons why these people are homeless and get them on the right track, provide schooling, classing, whatever it is, so they can get the job skills that they need or an opportunity to get out. But a lot of these already exist, so maybe it's just that they're unaware of it or they're ignorant of it, and to help get that information out would be a great tool to find out where exactly they can go, who they can get help from, and the type of help that they need. So, thank you.
That is a great question, and I think we do need to be aware of that. You know, as a city, we need to be there for all of our citizens. You know, whether they own or live in their own home or whether they're homeless. And I think that we need to work with the organizations, you know, like the Salvation Army, like the Advocates Against Family Violence, and our local churches, including them as well. They all have a desire, a great desire, and a mission to help everyone, especially the homeless. The Boise Rescue Mission is another great organization. I know my family and I, we've had the opportunity to serve with the Boise Rescue Mission when our boys were younger. We would go every month over to Boise, and we would work with them and volunteer with them, and you would see these wonderful, amazing people, and oftentimes it's, you know, not of their own accord of why they're homeless, and I think we need to be aware of that. Also being aware that there's many kids in our schools that are homeless, and I think it would be shocking to many of us if we really understood and knew how many homeless kids there are in our public school system. And so it's a real issue, so we need to be aware of that. I think we can work with those organizations that are already doing such great things, especially with our local churches, reach out and create, you know, whatever it may be, committees or something like that to raise awareness and to see what are they doing, so we don't want to duplicate efforts. You know, if they're doing something great, what can we do as a city to help them to achieve their mission rather than trying to start it all over on our own and trying to and we're just duplicating efforts. So again, using those efficiencies and to try to help augment those organizations that are already doing a wonderful part, and what can we do to help make it even better in the future.
So I guess the only rebuttal I would have is actually a question for Jerem. Being currently on the city council, has there been any kind of plans regarding the homeless or the panhandling in Caldwell now? The additional organizations that we have in our community are great, but they're also being overrun, unfortunately. So yeah, my main question would be for Jerem is, as the city council now, is there anything that you guys are doing or talking about?
That is a great question, and we can always and obviously need to do more and can do more. And that, if I could elaborate a little bit on that, and hopefully maybe Chris too, if he wants to comment on this, give him that opportunity. But I think as a city council, we need to do more. And I know that's one of my plans as mayor, and whoever does get elected to city council may not like me as much, because I think that as a city council, we need to do more. And their new city council, whoever they may be, need to be more engaged. We need to be out in the community, getting to know the community members. We need to, you know, it's just not show up every other week, the first and third, you know, Monday of the month, and do your city council meetings. We need to be more engaged. We need to be going out to, you know, activities, to ribbon cuttings, to school openings, and those different things. And so I think it's important that we do get more involved. And I believe that the mayor can help set that tone for the city council and to encourage them. And, you know, there's other things that we can change as well. You know, having the appointed officials report to city council members so that they're engaged in those departments as well. So I think we definitely need to do more. And need to be more engaged as a city council, not only in this, but in many other aspects of reaching out and being a part of the community in that respect. So great question, thank you.
Yes, there's always this, we can always do more, but this is something that the city is very limited on what we can do to help. And we need to reach out to residents that are willing to put in time to help out, and more volunteer groups that can be found. And hopefully, with the working of the city, allowing what we can do with infrastructure and buildings that we have in place, working with law enforcement and officials to maybe notifying these volunteer groups of where they can go to get help, they can get food, they can get clothing, they can get a shower, maybe a good outfit so that they can get into a job interview and get helped out. But this is something that the whole community is going to need to work together on, not just city government. So it takes all of us working together. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to start for the next question, so you're up again. This question comes from Chuck Stodick.
Yes.
And it's, do you have any experience in local or state government functions, and please explain.
Okay, so the question is, for those that might not be able to hear from Chuck Stodick, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, do you have any experience in local or state government?
And please explain.
And please explain. So when I got involved with government, I was like most citizens. I didn't know where to start, so I threw my hat in and ran for city council. From there, I was introduced to many, many, many groups. And one of them is the Canyon County Republican Central Committee, which I ran and got elected as a precinct committeeman in my area. For those of you that don't know, the CCRCC, yes, party affiliated, but they watch city legislation, county legislation, not so much local legislation. This has taught me a lot. We get guest speakers. I have the opportunity to speak to senators. I have the opportunity to speak to representatives, so I can learn from them. And the questions I've asked them and picked out of their brain group and information has been wonderful and taught me a lot. The other thing is, I'm sorry, what was the last part?
State and local government functions, and please explain.
Yeah, so the functions that I'm involved with mostly are with the Caldwell Veterans Council. We work as a board to help get issues taken care of here in the city. Obviously, we focus on the veterans, and get that awareness out. But we're out and about. We're trying to do community service, help the community. We're all one team. And so I am lucky enough to get meetings with Senator Fulcher and other representatives for veteran concerns. And when they come to us, we get to understand and learn how the whole process is working. And this has given me so much experience. It's been amazing. Thank you.
So I do have extensive experience in both the state government and the local government level. In the state government, I served as a state representative for District 10 for 3 years, and then also in the local government as an elected official, but also as an employee in the local government. I worked at Canyon County as a land use planner. I worked at ACHD as a transportation planner, and I worked at the city of Caldwell as the senior planner for 6 years before I was elected to the city council. And I've been on the city council for Caldwell for 2 years now. And I believe that this, all this experience has helped prepare me for the opportunity to be the mayor of Caldwell, to be able to, I'm also a small business owner, so I get to see that side of things and, the improvements that we can make there from a city perspective. As a city employee, also firsthand knowledge of, how the city runs, the things that we do really good, the things that we maybe don't do so good, and the things that we can improve on. And then also as a city councilman, to be able to work, with the citizens, work with the council and with the current mayor, in trying to, make Caldwell the best place that we can. So yes, I have extensive experience in all different forms of state government, especially in local government. And I think oftentimes we forget that local government is really has the most an immediate impact and effect on the citizens. State and national get a lot of attention, but many times local government gets overlooked. But really that is at the heart of the issue, and that is really what will affect you the most and the most immediate for sure. So, and I have extensive experience in all aspects of local government.
Chuck, great question. I've gotten this question asked a lot. So I have spoken in the legislature 4 different times, or to the legislature House Resource Committee, regarding our local resources and property rights. So that's as far as I've gone as far as the legislature. And then I recently started watching and going to city council meetings to learn more on how the process works. And that's really all I have, Chuck. But I just want to say, I've heard from a lot of people in the community when I tell them I don't have the experience or I don't have any local government experience. They always tell me sometimes having lack of experience is the best. So that's supportive. And so there we have it. Thanks, Chuck.
Like I said before, I've had a great opportunity as being a precinct committeeman to have access to those with a wealth of knowledge to help me along my way and guide me into how to properly approach the situation, what to look for, how to tell what's coming up in the future, and even how to read bills and understand what's going on. But another part of experience that I fall back on is my military training. As a company gunnery sergeant, I was responsible for what you could basically call as a small city and a $140 million budget. So with this, you have to be able to manage the budget for not only living expenses, but logistical operations, tactical operations, and everything else. Housing has to deal with that. Food has to deal with that. And making sure the smaller governments, if you want to call it platoons, that aren't overspending. So that's another way that I get some experience and understanding to fall back on how to run a much larger city. Thank you.
This question comes from Stan Wyman, and it's, how would you handle an employee falsifying time cards? Please be specific in the procedures you would take and explain why you chose such actions.
Very good. Okay. And this question may come from, if you remember my comments before, and hopefully everybody is able to hear those. So first of all is you need to gather the facts. You need to realize that not all things that happen are intentional. You need to look at the process that is done. I mentioned the process that the city currently uses. That is something that definitely can be and needs to be improved on. So that's the first thing that you do. You try to improve the process. You gather the facts, you speak to the individual, you evaluate it and see what those facts result to, and then if needed, you apply the punishment. And then you move forward from there in expecting better results. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. So do me a favor and repeat that question, please.
Certainly. How would you handle an employee falsifying time cards? Please be specific in the procedures you would take and explain why you chose such actions.
Okay, so falsifying time cards is lying, and it's just, it is, and mistakes do happen. As an example, I worked for a company where I had actually managed a department of 4. And I had a gentleman doing this, and we didn't catch on to it for quite a long time. He was good at it. But ultimately what we did is we took the 3 steps. According to the guidelines for that company, it was a written warning, it was a verbal warning, and then we did the termination. So myself, I didn't terminate. That wasn't in my capacity, but we took the necessary steps to do that. I would agree with Jerem. You should get all the facts. I don't think jumping to the conclusion of this person's a bad liar, and get all the facts, get everything together, and then go from there. I mean, that's the experience I've had with it. So that's what I would probably do again.
Okay, so we're all human. We're all capable of making mistakes. Falsifying time cards, like my other companions have said, you know, there could be multiple reasons for this. It could be malicious, could be ignorant to how it's actually done, or can it be they're just unaware of what they're doing. So making sure the training at first and it is explained on how to enter their information in the time card is done properly. So if we catch somebody falsifying time cards, you sit down, you find out if they're aware of it and why they are doing it, if so. Explain it to them that this is an administrative situation. Please don't do it again. Set some guidelines, refresh on how to properly fill out their time cards. And if it happens a second time, then maybe it goes into their record that they are still continuing to falsify cards. Make sure that they understand the process the second time. And then, just like in baseball, if it happens a third time and it is malicious, at that point, sorry, 3 strikes, you're out. But at any point along the line, if you do find out it is being done on purpose and it is malicious, that's basically stealing from the taxpayers, and it needs to be handled directly. But once again, you can't have a knee-jerk reaction and automatically assume that this person is doing it maliciously. You must find out both sides of the story as to why this is happening. Thank you.
Nicole, you get this question? This is from Laura Carrier, and her question is, how will you handle diversity issues and constituents that disagree with your positions?
That disagree with me. That's what I was writing. Okay, so Laura, great question. So how I would deal with diversity issues and the ones that people that would disagree with me. First of all, diversity is a beautiful thing. In one of my videos I did on my Facebook page, and I think it was for the Statesman editorial interview that I did, I just commented that we need to have diversity. We need to have multiple groups of just different kind of backgrounds, and that's how we learn, that's how we grow. It's kind of like the old saying, when you travel the world, you can, you know, you get to learn about things, and it really opens your eyes. And so that's what I would say bringing diversity here would open locally on a local level, would open the eyes of our kids, really. That's who I'm really thinking of when I say that, is our kids, but adults too. So, and for how to, the issue that one would disagree with me, right? Is that right, Jerry? Okay. To deal with the ones that disagree, I think I would listen. I would sit them down, I'd listen to them, I'd listen to their concerns, and I would really try to come to a compromise. I'm really good at listening, and I really do, I am good at listening, and I really do want to not have someone disagree with me, but I'm okay that disagreement it's okay to disagree at the same time. And I don't know if that answered the question. Thanks.
One more time, just make sure I have it correctly. Question, please.
How will you handle diversity issues and constituents that disagree with your positions?
Okay. First off, to handle diversity issues, that's a big open question. So can't speak on any particular diversity issues, but if it's, for instance, to get more residents involved, that makes it kind of difficult because you can't force an individual to get involved with something. Diversity issues, this is something that needs to be talked with the community, and that's where my accountability and town hall meetings would come into. The people could come in if they had their diversity issues or problems with the city on that level and how it's being conducted. We get to hear directly from you, not only what is the issue, but what you would like to see the city work on and how we would take that on. The other one is working with constituents that disagree. You're not going to make everybody happy. We all know that. So there's always going to be that group that disagrees with you. Well, the difference is unlike our federal government and even at the state level we see today where they butt heads and they fight, nothing gets accomplished. So you have to be able to meet each other halfway for the same goal and determine how that's going to get there. So that's what it would take. A sit down, a talk, hear from both sides what the issues are, what they don't disagree with, and find a compromise to work so that we can help fix the problem and get it solved how we all want it and how it needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Great question from a great teacher. And so how do you handle diversity issues and constituents that do not agree with you? Diversity is an extremely important part of a community, embracing the diversity that we have. Caldwell is a very diverse community, and that's a wonderful thing. And I think it enhances our community and makes it better. And we need to be able to have open communication to reach out to, maybe those groups that are not represented very well within the city, whether it's on the city council or in the city government. We need to have an open door policy that we can reach out and talk and bring them in and see what can we do to make us even a more diverse city and to be more welcoming to all people. As in regards to disagreements with constituents, disagreements in and of themselves are not a bad thing. The way that you handle a disagreement can be. As working for the city as the senior planner, it was not uncommon to have disgruntled citizens coming in, whether it was a neighbor that they were complaining about or another issue, and the first thing that I learned is you need to listen. You need to listen to that individual and hear them out and see what is their issue, and then try to find some common ground. And then once you're there, that usually opens that door to working together. Like I said, usually at the end of the day, if everybody just comes in and everybody agrees on something, you usually don't get the best product at the end of the day. It's those times where you come in and people have different thoughts and different ideas. You listen to each other, you work together, and that's where you really refine your ideas and your thoughts, and you come out with the best solution. So you need to embrace the disagreeing. Again, it's how you handle it. Disagreeing in and of itself is a good thing, and if you use it correctly, will make it a much better process and a much better result at the end of the day.
Yeah, once again, all great points and exactly how it needs to be done. I'm glad to see that all three of us are pretty much on the same page. It's amazing and rare in politics. But one thing I would like to stress, and in handling this situation, the most important thing will be hearing from the residents. And like I said, the town hall meetings where people can come in, having an open office, all councilmen and myself as mayor, being readily available to answer that. I have my own problems. I don't know what another community's problems might be because I'm not a part of that community. And so it's very difficult for me to decide how the solution comes with that without hearing from those people. And that's why I would highly, highly suggest that all groups come in, speak their mind, tell us what's wrong, the issues they're facing, and what they would like to see as a solution.
Chris, you're back up there for Weston. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I apologize.
I need the exercise. I need the exercise.
This question comes from Julie Warwick, and it's, please tell us about your background and why you were qualified to be mayor.
Okay, now, I only get a time frame on this, so that's going to be fun. My background is, so when I started out, United States Marine Corps, teaches you discipline, leadership, decisiveness, tact, judgment. I could go on all night about what it teaches you. But when I stayed in the Marine Corps, not only are you doing the job of the position that you're slotted into your billet, but you're supposed to be learning and prepared to take on the higher billet. Now, I achieved the rank of E6, Staff Sergeant in the Marine Corps, but as a Staff Sergeant, I was a Company Gunnery Sergeant and a Company First Sergeant, which are usually held by E7 and E8s. So the experience I learned for running a city mostly comes from the Company Gunnery Sergeant position I held and the billet of the First Sergeant position that I held. This deals with, like I said earlier, it deals with billeting, it deals with food, it deals with logistics, it deals with operation management, making sure everything is in tip-top shape. And this goes, being infantry, comes everything from weapons being ready in case they need to be used, making sure the rangers are locked on and the training is done that needs to be done. Vehicles, the fleet of vehicles that we have, and I can tell you, government breakdowns are really big with our vehicles, making sure that the maintenance is done correctly and under budget, and that we are able to keep those moving. And then on top of that, you have the training that's got to be operated on, making sure I've got housing for all of my Marines, making sure they're being fed properly, medical's being taken care of. And then as a Company First Sergeant, my responsibility was the administrative side of that, handling with the actual personnel and dealing with the different departments that we have to make sure we're on the same page with the same goal, working in the same direction to make this happen. Thank you.
Do you need the question repeated?
Nope, I got it right here. So why your background and why that qualifies you to be the next mayor of Caldwell? And that's a great question. And again, I think that's where I really thrive and where I kind of separate myself. So Caldwell is at a crossroads. We are at a great place right now. We've done some amazing things, the development of Indian Creek Plaza and other things like that. Caldwell is kind of the place to be, and not just in the Treasure Valley, but almost in the country. There's been many articles across the country about how wonderful Caldwell is in the revitalization of downtown, the Christmas lights that we do. It makes national news every year, and so that's a great thing. And so, but with that has come, and we've talked about this before, has come growth, has come traffic issues, things of that nature. So while we are in a good place, in a great place, you almost create your own problems when that growth occurs. We go from here, looking at our zoning and what can we do to improve that, and all of the city regulations to look and see what is necessary and what is not, and try to simplify those processes. So I believe that all qualifies me to be a great next mayor. Also, it's important as a mayor to be a great listener and to listen to both sides of the story. That kind of came up in the last question also, but that is so important that you need to listen to everybody. There's a reason that city elections are not partisan. They're just open, and you vote for the best candidate, and you need to be able to be willing to listen to all sides. And I proved that when I was in the legislature. Regardless of what party affiliation you had, I was willing and wanted to listen to see what best solution we could come to. So I think being a great listener is super important. I believe that the background of understanding growth and being able to implement growth strategies that will be a benefit for the city now and into the future.
Julie Warwick, thanks for the question. So the background that I have is I have a bachelor's in English from BSU with an emphasis in writing. And I'm going to come at this with a little bit different angle since I don't actually have political background. I'm going to start off with, I agree with Jerem. We actually do need to listen, but we also need to act on what we hear from the great people. So, and given I'm a wife and a mom, or a wife and a mom, and sometimes a referee, sometimes I'm a Nerf shield, and I'm much more. I'm a budgeter, I'm a scheduler. I have to plan things, and if I don't, things get hectic and it falls on my shoulders. So sometimes, unfortunately, the mayor can be the principal of the school, if you will, and I've got that down pat with my kids. So that's what I have for you. That's my background. Thanks, Julie.
No. Jerem? Okay. Jerem, you get this question? This question comes from Haley Glenn. Mayor Nancolis has run the Mayor's Youth Group Youth Advisory Council for years. As mayor, will you be continuing this program, and what type of opportunities will you provide for the Caldwell youth?
Great question. So the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, not only do I plan on continuing that, but we want to expand it ever more, even doubling in size if we can. It is a great program that the mayor started, and it's going to be one of his greatest legacies when he leaves office, is the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. The youth are our future, and we need to get them involved in city government, in city politics. It is so crucial because that's how we're going to get, our next mayors, our next city council people are the youth of today. And so if we can start training them and teaching them about city government, about interacting, about policies, and implementing those policies is so important. And so the youth, I am passionate about the youth, and I think that it is so important that we have a leader that the youth can respect and can look up to and that they can trust. As the mayor and with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, you go on trips with those youth, and it's a great opportunity to show them the world, to take them to Washington, D.C., to take them to these places. I never had that opportunity as a youth. I recently went to D.C. for the first time a few years ago, and it was amazing. And I couldn't imagine, as if I had been a 16 or 17-year-old, how that could impact my life. And so the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council is so important and so crucial. And the way that we enhance that and grow it is we reach out to the communities, we reach out to the schools, we go into the schools. And again, not just the mayor, but the city council also needs to be a part of that, of engaging with these youth in their own atmosphere, going into their schools, going to the sports programs, being active so they see you out there and get to know you and have that personal relationship so that they feel comfortable coming and sitting in a city council meeting or whatever it may be. But yes, that program is crucial, and we need to not only continue it, but we need to grow it.
So the Mayor's Youth Program is a spectacular job, because I know probably one of the least exciting things for our youth to get involved with is probably politics. I know when I was in high school, I didn't have that much of attention to it because it was just a bunch of old guys arguing with each other, and I had better things to do, like play football. But no, the program is great, and it needs to remain, and it needs to grow, and we need to get more youth involved because, like Jerome said, they are the future. And eventually, I'm going to get too old to where I can't come up here and do these things. And to be honest, at a certain age, we probably shouldn't be doing these things, and a younger group needs to be coming in because they're more in touch with the community, they're more in touch with what's going on, and understanding from their perspective what they see and what they would like to fix. And that'd be amazing, getting them into here, bringing about their own ideas, getting them interested to sit on city council or even other positions, for instance, like precinct committeemen, and getting involved in politics and learning how it's done at a young age so they can step in running and get things going. So it's a great program, needs to be expanded on, extremely important, almost probably up in the top 3 most extremely important things that we have, that we can do, is reach out to our youth and make them involved and excited to be involved.
Haley, thank you for your question. Yes, I am so glad that we're all on the same page with this. I believe that we should continue it and expand it. I would like to add different avenues and capacities that are innovative and up to date and cool, if you will. We need to keep the interest of the youth in our community, and I just think it's so important. And yeah, I'm just going to agree with these guys.
Just real quick, I promise. It was mentioned by one others, and I think it's so important. Having fun. You know, you need to have fun with these kids. You need to know what their interests are. You can't expect them to come and enjoy sitting at a city council meeting, because those sometimes aren't even fun for the city council members. It's not going to be fun for a teenage kid out there. So you need to go, I said, be among them, know their interests, and have fun, and do the things that they enjoy doing, not the things that you enjoy doing. I know I've always tried, like I said, I've worked with the youth for so many years, and it's so important to know what their interests are and then be a part of it. If there's one that enjoys basketball, you go to his basketball game and you be a part of it, and you know that they were there. I know we were at the College of Idaho soccer game the other day. One of the young ladies that plays on the soccer team is a very dear friend of our families, and it means the world to her when we're there and we wait and we see her and we give her a big hug afterwards, and she just thinks that's the coolest thing ever that we were there to support her. So we need to have fun. I'm glad that was brought up, and knowing their interests and making that part of yours.
We are going to take a 5-minute break, and we will resume.
Hello.
This question comes from Ramsey Utros, and it's a fairly long question, so bear with me. Significant development is planned for Lincoln Road between Canyon Hills and Middleton Road. At least one development, Huntington Ridge East and West, is also asking to be annexed into the city of Caldwell. Severe traffic impacts are expected on current city residents on Canyon Hill, both from the Huntington Ridge East and West development and on other developments, even if they're not annexed into the city of Caldwell. Are you aware of these developments? And please express your opinion on how you would manage traffic impacts due to any new development.
Yes, I'm very vaguely familiar with this coming up. We have, I actually have no real answer for you other than what we are dealing with our subdivision. We are between Lincoln Road and Marble Front Road, and there's a multiplex going up directly behind our subdivision there, and they were talking about the road situation, the traffic situation. Quite honestly, we were assured that the traffic would not increase. And we know that that is not the case. Unfortunately, that would be the first thing to increase once they had people start renovating these developments or renting these developments. So yes, I know about them. And as far as traffic, honestly, there's going to have to be expansion on the roads. There's going to have to be curbsides. There's going to have to be pedestrian. Between those roads that you're talking about now, there is actually a lot of people that do walk out there. Several times I have driven out there and I've seen people in the morning, I've seen people in the afternoon. And so we would need to have the development that's proper with proper curbing, proper sidewalks, and easement accesses for the pedestrians. So unfortunately, I don't know any more or further than that. So that's my answer for you, Ramsey. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a perfect example of forced growth when the city is falling behind in the infrastructure and the growth that we're pushing for. So my answer to this is once these go up, they've already started, but we need to sit down with city planners. We need to sit down, look at the future of if we put a multi-story complex, apartment complex in here, what does that do to the traffic? And I know they already do that now, but we need to look ahead before something like that goes in. Sustainable growth gives us the opportunity to widen roads if possible. It gives us the ability to look at creating new access roads to help alleviate a lot of this construction. And unfortunately, as the city grows, so is traffic. And this is a very difficult question. There's no real answer to it, no real solid answer to it, other than working together as a group, figuring out Do we need to put in new roads to alleviate traffic, and how can we do that? Which roads can we widen, are possible to be widened without using eminent domain and taking somebody's property? I'm not a fan of that at all. So we need to slow down the growth to a sustainable rate to where we can look at it and know that the future is coming and it's not going to stop, and traffic's going to get bigger. Meridian understood this, and I'm sorry, but going back, man, years, probably over a decade ago, and they had to change streets into one-ways, going in different around, and actually buy some plots and move roads around to where they can help alleviate that traffic. And I like the way Meridian has it. They have two main roads, kind of like we do, going in and out, but we're not set up like they are, and this takes a lot of planning, a lot of work, and a lot of discussion on how we're going to attempt to alleviate these problems.
Okay, so first on that question, I am not aware of these developments. I don't know if they have pending applications with the city for annexations or for subdivisions. Typically on the city council, you do not see those until a week or two before the hearing when the packets are mailed to you, and then you have the chance to review those to eliminate any ex parte or any type of communication like that. So I'm not aware of any. There may be some pending applications, but like I said, as city council, we don't see those until a week or two before. But there's a great question about the managing the traffic impacts, because any type of development is going to have some sort of a traffic impact. Developments, like was mentioned in this, could have significant traffic impacts. And so with that, in regards to if those proposals do come forward, it's vitally important to follow and to understand and to read the traffic impact study. Each of these developments that were mentioned most likely would require a traffic impact study. City code requires, if you're going to create so many vehicle trips a day, that you must do a traffic impact study, and that it has to be done by a professional engineer firm on that. And so what they'll do, they will set out and they will do current traffic counts, and then they'll put those little things that you run over on the road that you see with the markers there, so they can count how many vehicle trips per day are passing by those intersections. So they'll look and see how many vehicle trips are happening today. Then they'll calculate with the number of homes, and if there's commercial involved, how many future vehicle trips it'll generate, and then the strain that'll put on the system, on the existing system, and any improved intersection improvements or widenings that will happen as part of the development or another area. So it's important that we understand what a traffic impact study is, and that not only that we understand it, but we must implement it. If it states that we need to have a turn lane installed here or widening of this road there, those must be improvements required of the developer. Because if you don't require it of the developer, it's still going to be needed, and that means in the future it's going to be the taxpayers of Caldwell that pay for those improvements for that development, and we want to avoid that at all costs. So we must understand the traffic impact study, and then we must implement that. And then we also need to review our transportation plan as a city. Lincoln Road right now is classified as a principal arterial, which is the highest classification. Marble Front Road is classified as a minor arterial. And I'll stop right there. So.
Chris, you're up. This question comes from Jerome Wagner.
Oh, weird.
With the incredible growth that Caldwell has experienced over the past few years, why is it relevant that the mayor have experience in smart growth concepts and transportation?
Okay, so I want to repeat the question one more time.
Sure.
Yeah.
With the incredible growth that Caldwell has experienced over the past few years, why is it relevant that the mayor have experience in smart growth concepts and transportation?
Okay, so the question was, why is it important for the mayor to have a good concept on the growth of the city and what's happening? Basically. So, I mean, that's what we have to deal with, is city growth. It's going to come, whether we use urban renewal to make it grow faster or if we let it go at a sustained rate. It's important to acknowledge and know where this growth needs to happen. Need to work with city planners, need to work with city council, sit down and determine, all right, this part of the city, what is it zoned for? What is it going to need 10, 15, 20, 50 years down the road? How can this possibly grow, and what is it going to do with traffic in this area? If we make this area suburbs, whether it be R1, R2, or R3, again, down the road, up to 50 years, maybe, obviously even more. How is this going to affect? You have to be able to look ahead. You have to be able to understand that the decisions we make today are permanent for the city. It's going to grow massively over the years. I believe just over the next 20 years, we're supposed to get another 20, 30,000 residents moving to the city of Caldwell. So this is something that needs to be looked at. And what it goes into, for the mayor being important to understand this, is prior planning prevents, I can't say that, future problems. So if we plan today, and for instance, I'd like to use Paris, France for an example. When they built their sewer system back in the early 1400s, I believe it was, the engineers that designed that had the hindsight to make it more capable of handling what they currently had. And to this day, they still use those same sewer lines because they are big enough and designed in just a way to be able to add on and handle the growing infrastructure that they have today. So anything we implement can't be to solve an immediate problem. For instance, congestion down Blaine Street or the Boulevard. We say, hey, there's a problem there, we need to fix it. Well, let's fix it so that it lasts for 50 years. And when it becomes a capacity in 50 years, that capability is there to handle and grow it even more if need be.
Is it facetious of me to say great question? But yeah, so as we've talked before, Caldwell is growing and it's going to continue to grow. And that's a good thing. I think we've all agreed upon that. And so we need to grow smart. And so it's kind of like, quality over quantity. I'm not saying that we need to, just have the quality, but it's, we need to do the smart things when we're looking into the future. And that starts with, updating our comprehensive plan map. That is a living, thriving document, and it needs to be. It needs to be something that's looked at on a yearly basis to see, are there changes that need to be made so that the citizens understand where, and they have an input on it of where they want growth to occur and what kind of growth in those areas. So that's where we start on that. Also, I like to say, if you don't plan for it today, you will pay the price for it tomorrow. I've been in meetings with, for new, whether it was, I remember some outreach meetings I was in regards to the city of Cuna, and they were looking at doing some improvements in their downtown on the streets. And the engineering firm was there and as an outreach with all the neighbors, and they came out. And the engineering firm basically said, we could do whatever you want. And that we could, we've got the equipment big enough. If you want us to plow every building through downtown and put in a 6-lane road, we can do that. But obviously the cost would be horrendous on that. So if you don't plan for it today, you're going to pay for it tomorrow. If you don't plan for the proper development, proper transportation, the proper routes, then you're going to pay for that tomorrow. So it's vital that the mayor understand those growth strategies and implement them. And it's also vital that he work with the city council. The mayor, on a lot of these issues at city council, he only breaks ties on a lot of issues. And so it's important that the mayor have a good working relationship with the city council members so that he can share their vision with them, get their feedback also, but you've got to work together on those issues. The mayor doesn't just get a rubber stamp, say this is going through. It's the city council to make those decisions. So he's got to be able to work with them. He'd have the greatest strategies and greatest thoughts in the world, but if he can't implement them with the city council, not much is going to happen, unfortunately.
Well, I would say great question, but he already said it to himself. So, so growth and the concept of the cities for the mayor. Okay, so it's important to know our impact and non-impact areas and what they are. We need to have the knowledge of problem areas or areas that have struggles in the infrastructures. But most importantly, we need long-term solutions, not just short-term expensive plans. What my question actually is actually to Jerem, being on the city council, what is the best option now that has come through city council that you've seen regarding this issue?
Oh, she asked him a question.
Okay, that's your turn to rebut.
I don't have it.
Okay, Jerem?
So I think the best option now is that we need to sit down and we need to, the first thing is really, I think we need to look at our comprehensive plan map. As I mentioned, that hasn't been updated for several years. So I think we need to start with outreach into the community, get the community members involved in that process. And that sometimes can be a very difficult and a very tricky thing to do. People are busy. They have busy lives, and I understand that they have, they have kids, they have lawns to mow, they have sports to go to. I know, for example, with my life, we have 3 young boys that are very active and in lots of different programs. And so asking to take an evening away from me and from my family is a big deal. And so you've got to realize that sometimes you got to be creative on how you do outreach to the community members. Sometimes you need to go to them and not expect them to come to you. So that's the first thing, is that, the best option now is getting a better comprehensive plan map, looking at it, updating it, and again, reaching out to the public, seeing what's the best way to get them engaged, even if that means you going to them, going to their neighborhoods, and bringing food with you. Food will bring people out. So you got to know how to work that, how to get people out, and how to get their opinions, because that's what matters, is the citizens and what they want, and implementing that policy.
This question comes from Jim Runsville. Will you work to protect Farmway Road as a high-speed truck bypass? Why or why not?
So that's a great question, and kind of, I think, plays into a lot of the other questions you had regarding transportation. Farmway Road is kind of how it's designated. It's not a highway per se, but it functions much like a highway, connecting Simplot and Highway 55. Highway 55, yeah, that's right. So yes, it's very important that we protect those corridors, because if you don't protect those corridors, then, traffic is like water. It's going to find the path of least resistance. And so if you start, there's a lot of, let's say a lot of development starts to occur along there, and you start giving a lot of access onto Farmway Road, and it gets much more difficult and much less safe for those trucks to travel through Farmway Road, then they're going to find other ways to do it. And usually that means through residential subdivisions, residential areas. So we need to protect those corridors, not just Farmway, but others as well, so that, especially Farmway, where it has that direct connection. I mean, there's no curves, it's just a straight shot between those two. And so what that does by protecting that corridor is it protects the other areas around there, because the trucks are going to continue to use that. They're not going to follow, again, the path of least resistance. They're going to use what it's meant for, so it's vital that we protect those areas.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Will you work to protect Farmway Road as a high-speed truck bypass? Why or why not?
So I don't have a lot of experience in this, and the truthful answer would be that yes, I would work to protect the Farmway corridor, simply because if it's not protected, I feel that the truck drivers and the mass amount of traffic would actually find a way to go through the business loop, and it would create congestion through just the downtown area and then onto 10th Ave and down. So I would say we would need to protect it just for the sole purpose of congestion inside the city business loop.
Yes, that road needs to be protected and preserved in its capacity of being a highway access, high-speed access for truckers for as long as we can. But we all know that we have to plan for down the road. We can't prevent any of that farmland from being sold to private industries and get it developed. Once again, as city council and as mayor, we can put certain limitations with the type of buildings that can go in there, but we can't stop it. So not only do we need to protect that as the high-speed access for truckers, but we need to start finding another possible route for high-speed truckers in the future should this happen. So when it does happen, it's not a problem. We just have the new spot already open, already ready to go, and truckers still have access to that without having to drive through subdivisions, major parts of the city, or some other issue where, one, would slow them down, two, put the citizens at risk that use those areas. If you have a truck driving by large suburb complexes, there's a possibility of kids out there riding bikes. There's a possibility of people going jogging, running, walking their dog, everything that comes with a suburb. And then again, if it becomes developed into more of a shopping area, same problem. You have even more people now that are going to be walking around in the areas and possibly could get hurt with these trucks going through, and the truckers are not going to like this at all, because now it slows them down and they have a lot more to worry about. So one, yes, I want to preserve it for as long as humanly possible that we can as a city, but also when that day comes that we can't, we already have the alternative ready to go, ready to launch, so it does not affect or change anything for them.
One other thing, too, that we need to be aware of on this, for example, with Farmway Road, and I did mention this earlier, so it actually is governed by Canyon Highway District, not the city of Caldwell. And so it highlights also the need for the mayor and for the city to work with these other agencies, you know, because as the city of Caldwell, we're surrounded by Canyon Highway District, Nampa Highway District, City of Nampa, Canyon County. So there's multiple other public agencies that have a direct effect on Caldwell and on its residents, and this is a great example. We can want to preserve that as much as we want, but if Canyon Highway isn't on board, then there's not much say that we could have, to be honest. And so it's important, and I think they do want to preserve that, just so you know. But it's important we have those open relationships and open dialogues with the other agencies so that our vision and their visions come into line, and so that at the end of the day we still get what the citizens need and that safety and protection on those corridors.
Nicole, you're up for the first question. This question comes from Kaylee Schwarting. Do you have any regrets in your political or professional career so far? And if so, what did you learn from them?
Any regrets in the political?
Or professional career so far? And if so, what did you learn from it?
Kaylee, I would say to you that my biggest regret is not getting into politics earlier in life and actually getting some experience, better experience. I would say that right now, I made the ultimate mistake of thinking, oh, people are just going to accept me. And I started talking, and I realized that I was just talking. There was no substance to it, and that kind of bit me in the behind there for the first week of running my campaign. So I really learned that we really just need to speak with purpose and with substance. And if I can accomplish that, then anyone can do anything.
Okay, so for me, this is a difficult question. Do I have regrets? And I'll start with my professional career. Yes, I do have regrets. If I could go back and I would change things without getting in too much into it. Infantrymen is Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, there were things I wish I could have done differently on certain missions and certain aspects of what went down. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but of course, you know, you get to look back, hindsight's 20/20. If I would have made a different decision, would this gentleman still be with his family today? That's all I'm going to say about my professional career. Now, my political career, yes, once I got involved, became a precinct committeeman, I've always had my idea, my beliefs of patriotism was that the government serves the people. Unfortunately, it's not always that way. And the regret I have currently, and my only experience, if you want to call that professional experience, it is an elected position, but I don't get paid for it, is not being more vocal in the beginning and trying to drive your local political groups to pay more attention to the residents and get residents involved and get your guys' opinion, your guys' issues heard, not just the individuals that are sitting in these offices considering their own agendas, because that's not right. It needs to serve. So my biggest regret is not hitting the ground running, and instead of I sat there and watched to see how it learned how it worked. So yes, if I could change that all over again, I'd have gotten into this grounds running, and I should have gotten into a ground running, but I'm here now, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
So one of the regrets, and I'll take it from a professional perspective. So as I mentioned earlier, I am a small business owner here in Caldwell. My wife and I own Soda Burst. It's a soda shop in downtown Caldwell on the Indian Creek Plaza. And I wish that I would have become a small business owner sooner. We opened 3 years ago. And owning and operating a small business opens your eyes to many different things. It allows, I have a business degree. I attended Arizona State University, the W.P. Carey School of Business. I got a degree in business administration. And so I wish I would have put that to use sooner. You realize the effect that city codes, city policies can have on a small business. You're fighting and scrimping every day to make sure that you're earning money to provide for your family. And the littlest things, what can seem like the littlest things, can be insurmountable sometimes for a small business owner. And so I wish, if I could go back, that I would have started a small business sooner. Just like I said, just opened your eyes and realize how important it is that you get rid of the things that aren't necessary and try to make it as easy as possible for these businesses to open and then to thrive, because we live on small businesses. All communities live on small businesses. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, to the Chamber of Commerce right here, but it is so true. And if you look around the entire country, we are built on small business. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and that would be the one regret, is if I could have started that sooner, I definitely would have done that.
Chris, you're up. The next question comes from Lori Ratcliffe, and she wants to know what your party affiliation is.
Well, it's pretty easy. I've said it several times. I am the Republican precinct committeeman, so my party affiliation would be Republican. But once again, I want to remind all those watching at home and listening that this is a nonpartisan race. And how you separate that, I understand the importance of knowing a party affiliation, but the importance of being in a position that is nonpartisan is you have to be able to listen to everyone, the constitutionalists, the liberals, the Democrats, the Republicans, any party that's out there. So you can't be loyal to one party. You have to listen to everybody, because it's everybody's city. So everybody has a valued argument, and everybody needs to be listened to, and those need to be equal in weight in how you approach and answer those questions. Thank you.
I am a registered Republican. When I was in the state legislature in the House, I was Republican for District 10. And as was mentioned, city politics is great. It's nonpartisan. And so that's where it's so important to listen to everybody, because every citizen's voice counts just as much as the next person's. Just like at the polls, every vote counts the same, one per person. And everybody's voice is just as important. And so in local city government, it's so important to involve all the people and to make sure that each of their voices are heard and implemented in the way that the citizens as a whole want their city to be run and move forward.
Lori, I am a Republican, and I will say that I agree with everything they said, just to make it short for time-wise.
One thing I would like to add to that is the advantage being a nonpartisan race, excuse me, is I don't have a party breathing down my neck trying to force certain policies and regulations on me, because they get no say in the city. I may be aware of what they want, I may understand what they want, but they don't have the ability to come in like our state legislators do and say, hey, this is the bill we want, this is what we're pushing, we support you openly, so if you lose that support, it's going to be difficult to get reelected. I don't have to worry about that in a nonpartisan race. So you cannot serve two masters. A great man once said that. You cannot serve two masters, and therefore, in a nonpartisan race, the Republican Party, unfortunately, will not have influence on my decisions. Thank you.
Jeremy, you're up for the next question. This also is a long question. It comes from a William Gigray. Caldwell's population has grown exponentially in the past 10 years, and with that have come many great things that are attracting people throughout the valley to come and check out Caldwell. However, the one thing Caldwell has not kept up on is the growth in both the police and fire departments. In fact, the fire department has only hired 3 new employees in the last 15 years, and finally opened 1 new station. What are you as mayor going to do to change that? And if you are, if you're a current city council member, why have you not looked to grow your essential safety services with the population?
Great question, Mr. Gigray. So the first thing that we got to do is there is a problem, and we need to fix the problem. So to fix the problem, you need to understand the problem. And I've spoken, with the fire chief, and I've spoken with the police chief to try to understand what that problem is. And so once we understand that, then we can go to fixing it. And I know a big part of the problem appears to be the pay, the wages that we pay to our officers, to our police officers, to our firefighters. And so we need to fix that so that we're not losing them. The city of Caldwell has actually become a training ground for many of the other cities for their police and for their fire. They're smart, and they've learned that rather than hiring new officers and training them and putting them through post, they can just wait, let Caldwell hire them, train them, pay for them to go to post. Then once they hit that next level in pay where we are so far behind, they can come in, swoop in, take our best officers and bring them over to there. They're already trained, ready to go, and then we're starting over from scratch. And so we've got to fix that. And one way that we need to do that, I think, is we may just need to bite the bullet. Obviously we have the money to send a new officer to post. We have the money to train them, for those first couple of years, because in talking with the police chief, it takes a few years for them to really get up to speed where they can be out there on their own because they make some very, very crucial and important decisions. And so if we have the money to do that, then we should be able to hopefully move that money and try to get where we're retaining more officers rather than just spending money to train for other departments. So we need to fix those holes, fix those gaps, understand them both in the police and in the fire department. And if we need to hire some more officers, figuring out officers or firefighters, figuring out a way that we can do that and provide those funds. Because the funds are there. We're spending the money on training and this, so we just need to, again, maybe bite that bullet, have faith that if we pay them more, they most likely will stay. We'll still lose some, but we're not going to be wasting all that money on training, and we can put it into our actual employees and retaining them.
Okay, William, one of my running points has been that we need to expand the fire and the police. Again, like I said earlier, we need to protect those that are protecting us. Just a quick story. Recently, one of the city council seat 3 candidates stated that her husband previously worked for the city of Caldwell, and he was working with an expired bulletproof vest, and it really concerned her because he went to work every day with the expired bulletproof vest. This was some time ago, but it's still there. The problem's still there today. We don't have the resources. We don't have what we need right now. And I would actually avidly disagree with Jerem on it's great points that he just made, but we have a fund right now in the city that will keep those officers. There's no reason why we're losing those officers and those firemen. If we've hired 3 firemen in the last 15 years, it's unacceptable. We have like I said, we have a fund in the city right now that is prepared to. Quite honestly, it's just sitting there. It's a savings account, and it actually should be used for our fire and our police. And I'm not sure why it isn't. So when Jerem talks about the city council and what they could do, they could probably start issuing some checks.
Okay, after speaking with the police chief on the police matter, so we'll go to the blue side first. We don't have a hiring problem with the Caldwell PD because, as Jerome said, we're the springboard for other departments to hire on for us to train them for them. The problem we have is that retention. So after we train these officers, right now they look ahead at their future pay scales and what they're going to be making and what they plan on retiring on to support their families in the future is not on par with Nampa, Meridian, Boise, other places that they can go to. That's the issue that needs to be solved. And I mentioned earlier about a military pay scale. The advantage we have in the military is At a certain rank, you can look at the table and you can tell what rank you are with how many years of service, what is your pay going to be? And you can see that already. So that's an incentive to get promoted. Because right now, how the police department works is, why do I want to get promoted, take on extra responsibility, a ton more work, but make no more money for it, when I can go to Nampa and get paid a third more? So that's the issue that's got to be looked at. After speaking to the police chief, that's what we need to do. So, and he loves the idea of a military pay scale being implemented, so that way a young rookie officer can look and say, when I make corporal, hey, I'm going to get X amount of jump, and if I'm a corporal at 7 years, that's how much money I make. And it's on par with the other cities, and they have a reason to stay, keep their knowledge, and keep their experience of this city here, where it needs to be. Now, for the fire department, this is another issue. We currently have 40, maybe 42 firemen at the most. The average is supposed to be 1 firefighter per 1,000 people. I understand our current population on the sign says 55. Realistically, until the census comes out, we're probably at 63. So we need to look at hiring many more firefighters. We need to look at getting much better equipment to these departments. And that's what it's going to take, looking at the budget. What can I cut, give to the taxpayer for relief, and what can I give to the fire and police departments so they properly have the materials that they need. All right, so one thing I would like to add to that is the savings account that was brought up. Hey, that's a great idea. There's roughly about $26 million sitting in there. It accrues interest and it grows. The problem is, money's not really going into that system. So the question I would ask is, if we start pulling from there, when that account stops making money and that account shrinks and it's gone, where does the money come from? We have to make sure that when we hire on new people, we're looking to the future, that a paycheck will always be there and it is coming. So we need a reliable source for that money to come from.
This question comes from Rob Norman. With the recent uptick in violence in our community, the shooting death on Canyon Hill, and the shooting in Weimar parking lot, what are your plans to intervene and make Caldwell safer for its residents?
Rob, I would say with the uptick in violence, I would agree with you. I've heard of both instances. We actually, it comes down to one thing. We need more police force. It really just comes down, that's the easy answer. That's the actually, we need to just hire and expand our force. And that's probably the platform I'll keep saying all night long here. So that's the easy answer. We just need more police force.
The recent upticks in violence and that we're seeing in shootings is very worrisome. And once again, this comes to the police department, because obviously that's where it falls into, is law enforcement. Better equipment. Officers with the experience and knowledge sticking around would help greatly with that, because they will understand where the hot spots are, where the danger areas are. More police officers, if we need to bring them on, helps that. But I think also what that is, and this comes from me being in a family, long line of police officers. My father is retired from Meridian PD. My grandfather was the chief of police at Meridian PD. And the difference is when I speak to my father and the other retired policemen to this day, is they say there's a difference in the way the police work is being handled. It is no longer a deterrent, but reactivary. So, and what I get at this is, if you look at our cars today here in Caldwell, they're dark, they hide, low profile lights. You really can't tell it's a police officer vehicle until you're really on it. So, what does this mean? Criminal might think he's good, he's in the area, he can get away with something and the car can't see it. They need to be a deterrent. Make them, if we have city colors, make them the city colors. Give them the big lights so the criminals see this, that there is a presence. Now, the issue with the presence is, at any given time, we have maybe 6 to 7 patrol officers on the street at that time. That's very dangerous, because right now, they have to prioritize calls. You might put in a call about your house was broken into the night before, but they're not able to reach out to you because they have to prioritize, for instance, a car accident, which takes more than one police officer to handle. So 3, 4 cops have to go out there. They might have a domestic dispute or, heaven forbid, another shooting, which all officers are required to go to. So yes, more officers on, working the shifts and getting these guys out there so that there's a bigger presence, they're more seen, and that will deter crime instead of allowing the criminals to think no one's around and do what they're doing.
So there's a few things that we need to be that we should do and that we need to be doing to help with the recent uptick in violence. And I've heard this actually quite a few times from different citizens in Caldwell with the concern of that recent uptick. I believe the number one priority should be retaining our police officers. As mentioned earlier, that we're really good at training them and then they leave. So if we can retain those officers, that's going to give us that knowledge of a skilled police officer. So we need to retain them, and that'll help, I believe, to drive down the recent uptick in violence that we've seen. I know in talking with the police chief and with other police officers that lead department, that lead their division, that they're having, the majority of the officers on their shift are 1 or 2 year experiences, and you don't have much of 5 to 10 years or even more than that, and that causes concerns for them because of that lack of experience. So I think the first thing that we need to do is retaining those police officers so that we have police officers of 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience is the norm rather than 1 to 3 years, which is the norm now, and I think that'll be a huge help. Another is eyes on the street. Community engagement. The more eyes that you have on the street, the safer the street's going to be, and that involves the community, the people that actually live there, getting neighborhoods to understand and to know each other, to come out and do, go out into the neighborhoods and to have, the city sponsored events in different neighborhoods throughout the city so that they get to know their elected officials and they get to know each other, because that's going to increase the eyes on the street, which will make it a safer place to be. And then also starting in the schools, getting the schools involved and the kids in the school, because if you can get one of those children to grow up to follow this path, to success rather than this other path, that's a great place to start. Now that does take time, but you need to start that, and getting officers going to the schools and getting to know these kids and these kids getting to know them so they feel confident in the police force that's protecting them and their families.
Dr. Shailene French.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to rank education on a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 being not a priority and 10 being a high priority, where would you place education on that scale? What role does education play in your 5-year plan or 10-year plans?
Great question. So basically, I'll break it down. The question is scale 1 to 10, where does it fall in priority in education? And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Where in priority being either 1 to 10, and 10 being a high priority, and what role does education play in your 5 or 10-year plan?
Okay. So this is education's important. If we didn't have education, we wouldn't be able to read or anything like that. So for me, the priority right now at my first part, I have to say would be a 9. Obviously, the number 1 priority for me is the infrastructure of the city being able to handle it, and then immediately falling down to education. Without education, we're going to start getting people in here that are unaware of issues, unable to go out, make a living, and then they become, what's it called? They draw from society instead of contribute to society, and that's what we want. So my long-term plan is I would love to work with the school districts and the city council and the school board members and coming in, and once again, that involves hearing the issues directly from the people that are involved with those issues. When the Eastern UR expires, we're roughly, Caldwell school districts and Valley View school districts are going to get about $2 million apiece. That's going to be great. That's going to help. 1, they won't be so dependent on levies anymore. So that means the residents' taxes come down on property. But the other thing is now that they're each getting an extra $2 million that is now coming out of that area from the urban renewal when it expires, that they can put that towards better education, better instance. But the thing we need to watch, and that the city and the school boards need to pay attention to, and I understand critical race theory is a big deal, Common Core is a big deal, is parents getting involved with what they do and what they don't want, letting the city officials know, most importantly, the school board members go working together, all three of them, with legislation, and to figure out the best approach to getting these children educated and get the education they need. Right now, America's pretty far down on the lower level, and that needs to be fixed immediately. Thank you.
So scale of 1 to 10, I would say 10. Education is of the utmost importance to a community's vibrance and to its future especially. What role does education play in my 5-year plan? It would play the utmost role, very important. So education is just so important for our future, for our citizens, and for the way that we grow. So we need to make sure that our kids are in school, getting educated, learning the skills that they need to. We also need to look into the future and making sure that, as education evolves, that we're evolving along, or as we evolve, that education evolves along with it. The standard used to be you had all the desks lined up in your classroom. Nowadays, we need to look at that, see, is that the proper model still? Do we need to get kids out of the classroom and get them into like facilities and into industrial buildings to see, what does an engineer really do? What does a manufacturer really do? What does a welder really do? So they can see these skill sets that they may want to get, and to encourage them to follow those and giving them those opportunities. And I think it's crucial that we involve educators in these decisions and seeing how can we improve the way that you educate, what can we do to give you the tools so that you can provide the best education for these kids, so that it's almost a necessity these days that once they graduate from high school, in a lot of those fields, that they're ready to go, for welding and manufacturing. They're so far behind on the people that they have working for them that they need kids right out of high school with their welding certificate and being able to go right to work the next week. And those are good paying jobs. And so if we can provide the skill set to those kids in that atmosphere that they can just leave and have that waiting for them, is a great thing. Then I also think we need to make sure that we're including our educators, including the school districts, in the decisions that the city makes, and particularly to the way that we grow, because that has a direct effect on the schools. Now, it does take time for those developments to come in and to be built out, but obviously they need to have input on the proper place, and so they can plan for their schools and make sure that they're using their tax dollars and their monies the most appropriate way possible also.
Dr. French, I would say that, to be honest, it'd be 9.5 on the priority list for me. The 5-year 10 plan, or the 5 to 10 year plan, immediately we would need to emphasize the mayor's interest and get involved in the school districts and the school activities, along with the school boards. They are important, and they're the ones making the decisions, so we need to actually just be on board and figure out what's going on or what's going to be handed down to our school districts from our boards. I think involving kids in the local city government is a plus. So that's an advantage we could use, or even a segue. I think Mayor Nancolis's TVCC was a great start, but my focus would be on the primary education for kids. We need to give our kids every opportunity to have the quality education with all the proper tools.
Like I said before, education is extremely important, but the problem is why it's not a 10 on my scale is the very reason: infrastructure. As the city grows, already our high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools are getting to capacity. Until we look at our infrastructure and figure out a way to get more schools in the area, you're going to start getting overcrowded in the classroom, and once you get more children, the teacher has to focus on more, and the learning becomes watered down, basically. So that's why it's a 9, and that's why in the infrastructure, we need to make sure we have these public schools and areas for them to go to before they become overcrowded and they're just not capable of learning to the best capacity that they need.
I just wanted to add to that, Dr. French, that we need to give strong foundations to our students, and primary education is where we start. But it starts with good teachers too. So we need to actually capitalize on our teachers that are that not only live here, work here, but actually that do a great job. So I would actually like to capitalize on them and their fantastic ability to do what they do.
This is one of two parts. We're going to hit the first part first, and then we'll come back around to the second part. But it comes from Paul Webster. What are 2 or 3 things that the city of Caldwell needs to keep doing in order to make Caldwell a great place for kids and family?
Very good. So we need to continue to focus on the family. I think we've done a great job with that. Indian Creek Plaza, I think, is a great example of that. It is a very family-friendly environment where you can feel safe to bring your kids down there and just hang out and have fun. You know, and when there's experiences where maybe an event came in that they thought it was going to be one thing and it wasn't, and it was another, they're very quick to learn from that and to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so it's been a great thing, and so we need to continue to expand that. You know, one of the plans that I have as mayor is the Indian Creek is a great asset that we have, and we need to continue to grow on that. We need to make the plaza where it feels that it extends to other businesses. You know, there was a great hamburger shop, 812 Main, that closed not too long ago. Unbelievable owner, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and the food was fantastic. And they closed, and it was because they were a block off of the plaza and they couldn't be seen. And so we need to continue to grow that plaza and to where it feels like even if you're a block or 2 away, it still feels like you're part of the plaza so that people are engaged in that. And then also expanding, you know, the greenbelt and the pathway that we have in both directions from the plaza. You know, and as mayor, I plan on expanding that. We own property over where the Silver Bridge is, New Plymouth Bridge. We own all that property back behind there. And then we also own Curtis Park, which is on the other side of the river. So expanding that pathway all the way out to there to Curtis Park, and then even beyond, if we could get across the river, there's pillars there, we could actually put down a pathway to get across there, a little pedestrian bridge, so you could take advantage of Curtis Park. So you could have families come down to Indian Creek Plaza with their bikes, they hang out, they have some, you know, yogurt at the Good Spoon, they get a pizza at Extreme Pizza, and then they get on their bikes and they bike up to the park and they spend the afternoon in the park, then they bike down to the plaza again. And then they get some, you know, barbecue from the Chop Shop and they go into Flying M and get a smoothie. And so that just enhances what we already have and it grows it as a better and more wonderful place for families to come and live and enjoy those things. So those are things that we can definitely do and that I would plan to do as mayor is expanding those opportunities.
So Paul, you asked what is 1 to 2 things that Caldwell needs to continue to do to focus on the family, if I have that right. The community, we need to just keep focusing on the community. I have a desire to make the community and our kids, I wouldn't say make, I guess, give them the opportunity to be involved as much as possible with hands-on involvement. The community involvement needs to be a priority. The more involved our families are with input and or helping directly, the more people from our community will have that sense of pride and that sense of, hey, I live here, I'm helping out here. And so I would just say that we just need to keep involving any kind of community activity that we can. We need to just get everyone involved, and it whatever your ability is. Some people can do more than others, and that's great. We need to have that access to our community.
Okay, so what do we need to do? Indian Creek Plaza, I think, is amazing. I mean, it's done wonders for this place. But Indian Creek Plaza is small. We have the Greenbelt. We have the beautiful Indian Creek that's running through, and it's being beautified more and more, and it keeps going. There's a lot more work. What I would like to see and work with, obviously, the individuals that we have to work with, city council, planners, and outside businesses, is expanding Indian Creek, the success there, to all of Caldwell. Like, for instance, example, Boise. Boise, it looks great everywhere you go, and it's the kind of place where you want to walk around, check out the other shops, and see what it has to offer. Caldwell, unfortunately, we're not there. People come, they see Indian Creek, they have the beautiful shops that are down there. You have Flying Man Coffee, you have, the Extreme Pizza, is a good one that I like, and you have many, many others. Why can't we, but That's where it's at. That's where all the fun is at. That's where the music's at, the festivals are held, the water park is at. Looking at, is it possible to expand that to all of downtown Caldwell? So Caldwell becomes the place to where you want to walk around and see the other shops. I don't have all the answers on how to make that happen, or even if that is feasible to happen, but it's something I would love to see, to have Caldwell be the premier destination to bring in for our economy, that we have the restaurants and people are willing to walk down the street and see the mom and pop stores that don't get to use the advantage of Indian Creek, because Indian Creek is now expanded and it looks beautiful everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's family friendly, it's exciting, it's fun, you discover new shops, and by the end of the day, you realize you just spent 8 hours downtown without even realizing it.
Okay, let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. It's the top of the hour again, we'll take 5 more.
Okay, no, you're fine.
Nicole.
Okay.
This question is the second question from Tammy Ashmore. Do you feel that our current water situation is good enough to support this continued building expansion? Why or why not?
Okay, so again, current water.
The situation is good enough to support the continued building expansion. Why or why not?
Expansion. Okay. So so our current water situation is not good. We had a very hot summer this year and a shortage of water. There was a lot of I do believe I heard, I'm not sure which district or zones, but there was a couple that got their water shut off early for irrigation wise. I'm assuming that's what she's talking about. So Tammy, I would say the current situation is not good, and we need to expand, but again, it's one of those things where we need to expand for a long-term growth, not a short-term expensive plan just because we need it now. Sure, we need it now, we need to start working on it, but it needs to be a long-term, so we're not running into this expensive thing every single year, per se. But yes, it is a problem, and it's a problem, and we need to actually fix it, so.
So the question was, is our current water situation adequate to handle our growing expansion?
Yeah, do you feel it's adequate or good enough to handle and support the continued building expansion?
Okay, good enough to handle and continue to support the expansion. Okay, no, I do not. We are running into droughts, and all that depends on Mother Nature. So we need to be prepared for that. And once again, this comes back to sustainable growth, which I know all three of us have talked about. As we continue to grow, that's more family houses, that's more industries, that's more businesses that need to use that water. Now, Idaho sits on one of the largest water aquifers in the world. And that might sound great and sound amazing, but when we start pumping more water out of there, it has detrimental damage to the environment itself as well. And California is a good example to look at, where they're overpumping and the land is caving in up to several inches a year. So we need to look at the possibility of, as we continue to grow, how are we going to manage this water? Are we going to end up in some sort of system to where you're only allowed to water several days of the week? I sure hope not. But we're going to have to sit down, once again, work with the correct departments, and look at how much water is available, how much excess water, if we do have that, is available, and making sure we aren't taxing it to its burden and its capacity, because that's going to hurt the farmer growth, and water rights in this state. They're highly sought after, going all the way through back Idaho's history. So that's a tough subject. You want to make sure farmers and ranchers have that so they can produce what they need to produce. But on top of that, then the families need to be able to do the things that they need to do in their households. And then on top of that, you have the businesses also. So we need to make sure that as we plan, and I'm sure we are, and I'm sure we will, but we need to slow it down to get that water back to where it needs to be at the moment, and then see what we're consuming before we add more workload to that water.
That is a great question, and my response might surprise some people, but actually studies show that higher density developments actually are a less drain on the water system. So yes, we have a drought that we've been experiencing with the weather, with lack of rain and moisture. I thought it was great, this past, I guess it's been this last 2 weekends ago, that we all came together as a city and as faiths and had a day of fasting and prayer for water and for snow. That was the harder part. The water I didn't mind, but praying for the snow was hard. I didn't know if I wanted to be shoveling snow all winter, but I still prayed for it. And we saw immediate results in that, and that was awesome to see community come together. But like I said, it actually shows that the denser a development, the less strain it actually has on your water resources. And at first that may sound not right, but if you think about it, a high density development, take apartments, they're going to use a lot less water, those 50 or 60 or 70 people that live there, than, if it was sprawled out. And so I think that's where, we got to remember that is a city's role. That's why cities were created, to help protect agricultural grounds in the rural areas, in the county areas. And so that you don't have to have subdivisions in the county where they have, 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 wells being drilled for each of those lots. City has its water sources, its potable water for those people that come in, so that you're not, damaging any more than necessary the aquifer that provides the water for farmers. And so, like I said, it seems a little backwards, but when you start to think about it, you're like, actually, that does make sense. And so, being able to allow developments to come into the city can actually help protect some of that farm ground, not only from being taken up for homes, but also the water sources that it has out there.
This question comes from Chuck Static.
Static,
I
yeah.
keep pronouncing it incorrect.
Yep.
What is the city of Caldwell's budget for the next fiscal year?
So the question is, what is next fiscal year's city budget? Next city budget has been increased to, and I don't have the exact number off my head, so I apologize. We do have a city councilman sitting here who can correct me. About $107 million. Property tax portion will go up from 18 to roughly 20. It's one of the biggest increases. I've been following the tax increases with the city budget and property for Caldwell for the past 10 years, and this is up there as one of the #1 highest increases that we've had. So with that obviously comes a myriad. There's a reason that it goes up, I'm sure. City council, this isn't a decision they make overnight. This is lots of planning. This is lots of work that goes into it, coming into the other departments and bringing it into. But with this increase, once again, is going to be an increase on the taxpayers. This is why I want to get into zero-based budgeting. And I can't say that the increase that they put on was not put there for a reason. I'm sure it was. They just don't pick a number out of the sky. But zero-based budgeting would require each department, each head to come in and justify exactly what they plan on spending for that year, so that we can look at and we know, okay, and I will use the police department just as an example. Let's say the police department last year, it cost $40 million for them to operate. Well, now we bring them in for the next year for the budget, and we say exactly how much with receipts was vehicle maintenance, ammo, equipment, training, and go on. And they say, well, actually, we only spent about $33 million. That's probably going to be the projected growth. So that's what we have. So now we have a better idea of what we're going off of to determine a better idea of a budget. So there's less of a surplus, and a surplus is a good thing sometimes, less of a surplus that can go in, and with this fund that was talking about earlier, can be helped to utilize in case we under budgeted. There is some money there to help make up for that, and that gives us more aspect for the next year when they come and we redo it from every department again.
Thank you. And yes, Chris was spot on that. $107 million was the budget for this last year. And that's, something that obviously needs to be looked at every year. And that is where I think we need to ensure, that we get more community engagement, and that the budget is one of the most important things that gets looked at every year, from the city council and the mayor perspective. But it's also one of the least attended meetings that we have of the entire year. And so, how do we fix that? How do we get the city more involved, the citizens coming out and expressing, you've got budgeted, this much money for a swimming pool. We could say, for example, we're planning on building a swimming pool this next year. Having the input from the citizens, do you want to spend that $6 million on this pool? Because it does enhance and attract for the city. It's for, we're family oriented, and it's a great place for, a mom or dad to take their kids down to the pool to enjoy and have fun. Or would that money rather be spent somewhere else? And so getting that feedback, I think, is so crucial and so important. And again, just trying to engage the citizens in that process, and looking at each department every year, making sure that their budgets fall in line. If their budget was $5 million last year, that shouldn't mean that they get $5 million this year. Maybe they had $500,000 in one-time expenses, where they needed to buy new desks or office equipment or whatever it may be. So that should come out, and that shouldn't just continue to roll forward, so they can continue to increase that. It needs to be, what are the necessities? And there are different ways that we can look at trying to enhance that. I think one of them that we need to look at is trying to get as many of our employees working from home. I think that can be a great benefit to the city. It reduces the number of buildings and office space that we need to put those employees in. It reduces the number of desks that you're buying to have for those employees, because they'll be using their kitchen table or whatever it is at home. So that can have a lot of benefits on that. So those are things that we need to look at, kind of think outside of the box, improving our efficiencies. What can we do to get employees working from home if they want to do that, and if they're good at that. Some do a great job at that and some don't. And so you have to judge that, and you rely on your supervisors, your appointed officials for that. But those are things we can definitely do.
So Chuck, your question was, what is the city's next fiscal budget, or this last year's fiscal budget?
What is the city of Caldwell's budget for the next fiscal year?
Okay. Well, I have 107 million as well, but Jerem just said that it was the previous year's. Maybe I heard that wrong, but I would say it's 107 million, and I agree a lot with what Jerem was saying. The budget can fluctuate, and we can cut spending and wasteful spending where we can, but that's the only answer I have for you, Chuck.
Chris, rebuttal.
Okay, getting the budget down for next year's $107 million. Obviously, I'm not behind the curtain. I don't get to see everything decision that's made and why. And this is just to rebut the working at home. I don't know his exact intention, so I don't want to sound like it's an attack or anything, but I would like to know what positions would be working at home, the impact, and I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. What impact does that have on the residents if they come into an office that they need, but that person's now on home? Is this a Zoom meeting? Is this a phone call? And then again, all the distractions that are at the house. Maybe another option is to look at is, are we overstaffed? Where are we spending money that we shouldn't be spending money? What does the government have regulation on that it shouldn't be having regulation on? And then we can pull out from there. And for example, one of them is the golf courses. Why is the city managing a golf course? Maybe we can lease that out to where we get the money for the rest of the year, and a private company can run the golf course and take care of that through the private sector and make their profit off of that. Thanks.
So just real quick to kind of expand, on that. So yes, we have to have employees at the offices for when the public comes in to meet with them and answer their questions. And yeah, they're in person. There's a lot of employees, I think of, our plans examiners in our engineering department, that sit at their desk and they review plans for, subdivisions, for the water and for the sewer and for the streets, and make sure that everything's adequate. A lot of those things you can do at home. And I know, talking with the city engineer, he has staff that actually works much more efficient at home, gets a lot more done in their day at home because there's less distractions. And so it really varies on each individual, and you rely on those supervisors, on those appointed officials to decide. Because yeah, he also said he has employees that just don't do a good job working at home. So you need to rely on those appointed officials, those supervisors, to know their employees, know which ones can and do a great job at home and get the work done in a much more quickly and timely manner. So you got to still provide the services, but if it works for those individuals, it's great to give them that opportunity.
You get to come up with a question again. Why don't you sit down? This is from Julie Warwick again. do you have a background working with youth, and how will you interact with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council?
Very good. Great question. And yes, I have an extensive background in working with youth, particularly with my church, where I've worked with the youth for a number of years. I was recently actually a bishop at my church congregation for the youth that was dedicated to, and maybe a little bit older of the youth, 18 to 30 years old, but still in that young category. And so I have enjoyed those moments and those times that I've had to be able to work with the youth. You know, recently this last summer, I was able to go up as a youth leader with a group of young men, you know, between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. We went on a 4-day camping trip up in the mountains, and we were able to talk to them and teach them, you know, about how to be honorable men and how to make good choices and to be good examples and how to, you know, be respectful to women and to do those things that they should do. And it was just a great opportunity to be with them. And I've learned that the more that I'm with the youth and with these amazing individuals, I learn way more from them than they ever learned from me. The youth of this generation are just incredible, and especially here in Caldwell. And so, yes, I have extensive experience with that. I think it's important to have that, to be able to connect with the youth, especially with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and to just encourage these young kids to just want and to want to have dreams and to go after those dreams and give them the encouragement and the resources that they can do that.
So Julie, the question was, do you have a background in working with youth? Yeah, I do have a background. It's not extensive, but I have worked with youth. I've also had teens, and I also have my own kids as well. We have amazing kids in Caldwell. I've said that before. I'll say it till the day I die. We have kids that not only play sports, but we have kids that draw. We have kids that build things. We have kids that are innovative. We have kids that can do anything, make anything out of anything. They're just amazing. So I want to capitalize on those abilities because they are our future, and we really need to rely on them, and the more we can get them to have opportunities to shine bright, if you will, then it's just going to help our community out in the long run.
So the question, do I have experience working with youth? No, my experience working with youth at this point is very limited. Like I said, I'm a member of the Caldwell Veterans Council. We do have Boy Scouts in the building that we do host. The most interaction I've had with them is talking with the scout leaders and stuff like that. My military career, I used to be a SEER instructor, which for everyone out there that doesn't know, basically a survival instructor. I'm always open to opportunities to use my experience and knowledge to share with them, and we're looking at doing that as a possibility. They do a lot of stuff for us around the building and the hall and to help it taken care of, but once again, I'm not directly involved with that. That is the scout leaders. We also have the young Marines that we, how do I put it, get good labor out of them when we set up major programs and stuff like that that we use so they can prepare for what the Marine Corps is going to do to them in the future, I always say. But other than that, no, I don't have too much extensive experience working directly with youth. I have children of my own. They have their school sports and they have their activities, but that's where my limitations go to.
I'll be brief. I'd be remiss if I did not mention one of the greatest science teachers in the state of Idaho. She's earned the award before as the greatest teacher in Idaho, Mrs. Farrow. So she's a science teacher at Syringa Middle School. I volunteered as a mentor with her class for the last 9 years. So it's a Future City program where these kids come together, and it's competition across the country. And so they meet at Boise State University every January, and schools from across Idaho, even Utah and other states that come and compete, and the winner gets to go to DC. And I volunteered with them the last 9 years as their mentor, trying to help them understand how cities grow, why cities grow, and do those things. And that's been a great opportunity to get to know. And it's been long enough now where a lot of those kids have now graduated high school or in college. So it's been fun to see kind of them progress through that. So it's another great opportunity to serve the youth of this community.
I'm sorry.
I set him up. He says. Okay.
This one from Ramsey Charles.
Ramsey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Caldwell 2040 plan, which is the comprehensive plan, the City of Caldwell comprehensive plan? Please express your opinion on whether or not close adherence to the Caldwell comprehensive plan is necessary?
Rams, it's a great question, and I'm actually going to leave that for Jerem to answer, just because I only know bits and pieces of it that I've been researching, so I don't feel comfortable commenting on it without knowing a lot more about it.
Chris, you're up now.
Just so I'd like to be able to repeat the question, what was it?
It's with regard to the Caldwell 2040 plan, which is a comprehensive plan.
Yep.
Please express your opinion on whether or not close adherence to the Caldwell's comprehensive plan is necessary.
Okay, so the question was, is the Caldwell Comprehensive Plan in 2040, is it important to adhere to it? Okay. So yes, it's important to look at it and adhere to that plan. Again, I'm going to state I have very limited knowledge on this aspect of this very particular thing, and this is where my opponent's going to shine. But it needs to be relooked at, reevaluated, make sure it's still functional to what we do today and for tomorrow. And it has its place, and it needs to be adhered to as long as it fits with the long-term plan that we have going forward. Thanks.
As Jerry was reading, I'm like, I don't think I submitted that question. I'm like, and I'm glad that you said that I didn't. But yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, then I'll just, out of all transparency, help to write part of that plan when I was the planner at that. So I'll just make sure that that's out there. So yes, it's very important, to follow that plan and to have your comprehensive plan and your comprehensive plan map. And it's important to remember that those are, again, in my opinion, those are living, breathing documents. So you don't just write them and set them on a shelf and they stay there for, those 20 or 30 years. You need to review those on a yearly basis and see, because things change. If you look at Nampa, for example, when Amazon came in, that was a huge game changer for them, for traffic flow and for people coming in, and even for us too, because a lot of the people that work there live here. And so, things like that can change a comprehensive plan map. So you've got to continue to look at that. If you're not following your comprehensive plan map, it can create major issues today and even bigger issues in the future, especially in regards to traffic, and for schools also, because schools look at that and they're like, okay, they're planning, a high density residential development here, and they're planning industrial here. And so they're like, okay, industrial, we're not going to get a lot of kids coming to school, but over here, we're going to get a lot. Now, what if those flip-flopped? And all of a sudden you put the industrial where the high density residential is going to be, and you put the high density residential where the industrial is going to be. Now that throws off the plans for the schools, because now you're going to have hundreds of kids coming from this area where they didn't think they'd have any. Throws off for the transportation, because now you're going to have a lot of single family trips from this residential where they maybe were expecting large trucks and semis and things of that nature. So it can throw off many, many things. So it's important that you have that document and that you listen to it. Again, there's things that change, so you have to work with it, and it continues to grow and to evolve over time. But yes, you need to be able to make sure you're taking into consideration those things, getting the public's input when you create those plans, and that can help you guide your growth in the future.
Okay. Chris, you're up. How did this work out? Yeah. This question is coming from Jerome Wagner.
Him again.
Should leaders of government and elected officials be required to hold themselves to a higher standard when in office?
Should leaders in government and holding an elected office hold themselves to
Leaders in government or elected
officials hold themselves to a higher standard?
Be required to hold themselves to a higher standard when in office?
Yes, of course. And I'm going to use my own experience in this. So, the United States Marine Corps, we pride ourselves very big on professionalism and appearance. And even to this day, if you see the news and a gentleman breaks the law, if he served in the Army or the Air Force, they don't really mention it. But even to this day, because of the high image and standards that we hold in the Marine Corps, if you get arrested, they always say former Marine comes out. And the reason for that is because of the height of professionalism that they hold and the respect and the honor that they hold. And that needs to flow into public officials and elected officials when that comes into the point, because we are here for the people, and you also have to set forth a precedence of professionalism and being a role model. So especially while in office, if you do something that brings discredit upon the office, it's not just the office and my self-image that I'd be hurting, but the constituents underneath me, because those are the people that elected me. And then on top of that, as mayor, we'll use that position because we're running for it, that gives the city a bad name and a bad place. And all of you know, Caldwell used to be known as a bad area to be, and I would hate to see it ever get a reputation like that again. So not only do we need to hold ourselves up to a higher standard, but we need to live to that standard to be a moral and perfect example to the constituents and the residents of this area. Our past is important, extremely important. It says who we were and who we are today. And the fact that holding yourself to a higher standard. Do you want a police officer that has gotten multiple DUIs to still be on the road pulling people over? Whether it happened a year ago, whether it happened 10 years ago. No, you don't, because you don't want that person back to possibly fall into those old ways that could happen. So yes, it's extremely important to be held to a higher standard and live by that standard as well.
Very good. Yes, as leaders in government, as elected officials, we definitely need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. As was mentioned, we are role models when we're in those positions for the youth, and we've talked a lot about the youth today, that the youth need positive role models to look up to people that they want to be like. And if we're not holding ourselves to that higher standard, then what does that do for our future generations? And that doesn't mean perfection. None of us are perfect. There's only been one perfect man on this earth, and all of us are far from that. So we don't expect perfection, but we do expect us to hold ourselves to that higher standards. And when we do make mistakes, yes, forgiveness is possible, but with mistakes come consequences, and some consequences last a very long time. I know there was this great book that I read once upon a time, and it talked about that, and it talked about a young man who witnessed his parents murdered. And they were able to find the criminal and put him in jail, and it just carried with this young man for years and years, even when he had grown and started his own family, and he realized that he needed to forgive this person. And it took him years to do that, but he worked on it, and he was able one day finally to actually go to the prison to meet this individual that it took his parents' lives, and to tell him that I forgive you. So he did get that forgiveness, but he still had those consequences. He didn't get to walk out of jail that day with this man. He had to stay and pay the price for those mistakes that he had made. But it just was a wonderful opportunity for this person to give that forgiveness. But again, with that, you still have those consequences. So yes, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We don't expect perfection, but we do expect to live up to the standards that are enlisted in the duties that we have.
So, Jerem, should leaders in government or elected officials be required to hold themselves to a higher standard? The simple answer would be yes. We need to be a higher standard, but not arrogant. There is a definite line there. We need to show up for the people, and we need to show up for the job and for the people in our community and give 110% every day, and that doesn't always end at 5 p.m. or start at 7 a.m. It's continual, and that, to me, is what the higher standard would be.
Okay. Now you're up. This question comes from Jim Runsvold. Are you in favor of putting new bike paths on ditch banks?
So that is a great question. So we definitely need to improve the bike paths that we have in the city of Caldwell. When I worked at ACHD, I actually biked and bused to work every day. There were some days when I was crazy enough, I actually biked the whole way into Boise. And that opens your eyes immediately about the need for bike paths and providing those areas. And it has multiple benefits. It reduces, every time I biked to work or biked and took the bus, it reduced the car off of the roads and the highways. And if you can get enough people doing that, then it can actually make a pretty big impact on traffic, on, you know, having to rebuild roads. The less cars, obviously, the better for that. So yes, we need to improve our bike lane infrastructure that we have. Doing it on ditch banks can be a slippery slope, because many of the ditch banks are governed by that irrigation district, not by the city of Caldwell. And so they protect those pretty close. You know, they are worried about, you know, if a bike lane goes in on a ditch bank and then they got to bring their tractor in, you know, then that next fall after the irrigation water's gone to dig it out, they're going to most likely destroy that bike path if it's an asphalt bike path. And so they're very leery about doing that because they don't want to be responsible for reconstructing those. So, you know, you need to look on, you know, could you do like a recycled asphalt rather than paved asphalt? You know, would the irrigation district work with that and be more amenable to those type of solutions? So it's, again, a deal where, yes, it'd be great to do, but you have to work with those entities, understand, you know, the complications that may come with it for them in maintaining their infrastructure. But yes, the more opportunities we can provide for people to be able to get around multimodal without their cars is a great thing.
So thanks, Jim. That's actually a good question. I had not actually thought about that. But listening to what Jerem was saying, so the question was, are you in favor of bike paths on ditch banks? Is that correct? So I would actually be for bike paths. But like Jerem said, it'd be a slippery slope for the irrigation districts, and also if it was a fine line between a landowner and an irrigation district. I'm not for taking away somebody's land or somebody's ditch rights or easement rights for a bike path. But if it's feasible and we can do it, sure, I think that's a great idea. And I think we definitely need more transportation/exercise avenues. It may not work well going like downtown or down 10th, but we could definitely look at avenues for the ditch banks.
Bike paths are important, obviously, and I would like to remind, just in case, that bikes can ride on main roads as long as they utilize hand and arm signals, and they are treated like vehicles, and that can be dangerous, obviously. But the problem with going to utilizing ditch banks, and this has been brought up, you know, those are usually used for services for the irrigation to get their vehicles into. So if we open that up to the public, we got to think ahead. If we open it up to the bicycle riders, are they going to ride on a dirt path? Could they possibly fall into these canals, get washed away? How many kids are going to be going into this thing? It's dangerous. So if we pave it, well, now when irrigation comes in with their heavy equipment, are they going to damage the pavement? Now we have to pay taxpayer dollars to re-improve these. But the biggest concern I would have is once you open up to bike path, it's not going to stay that way. Now we're going to have pedestrians, and we're going to have people walking along these paths, and it's going to make it very, very difficult for them, the irrigation people, to get in and come and do their work. These are utility roads. They exist there so that maintenance and work can be done, and to congest that with residents, one, causes a problem for the irrigation, but two, causes a safety problem for the people that are utilizing that as a bike path or a walk path, which it may become, or children playing near the canals now. And then we'd have to look at, to added expenses, how do we block off the canal, keep people from getting into it? That falls more onto the taxpayer and could possibly make it more difficult for the irrigation company to work. So yes, bike paths need to be looked into. The green belt being extended to run through certain areas can be too, but widening bike lanes on roads needs to be looked into as well. So it's not an easy answer to say, yeah, we'll just open them up, because that opens up a bunch of other problems and difficulties for both residents and the irrigation company workers.
Go very slowly.
This question comes from Lori Radcliffe. What is your stance on COVID restrictions, i.e. do you support mandatory vaccines, masks, and or business closures?
COVID restrictions. Okay, so basically the question is, what is your stance on COVID restrictions, vaccines, masks, and business closures? Okay. So I am all for freedom of choice. If you want to have a vaccine, get a vaccine. If you don't. I'm for, it goes the same with masks. You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. If you don't. Along the lines for the businesses, if you want to require a mask for people to enter, do so. People have that choice to not shop there or to shop there if that makes them feel safer. So as far as the masks and the vaccines and freedom of choice, the business closures or the city government closures, I am not in agreement with that. I think that there's different avenues we could have taken. I understand the point. Mayor Nancolas made it very clear that he was trying to do his part for the city, and that's admirable. But sometimes what you think is doing the part is hindering what someone else needs for the city. So as far as, but going back to the COVID restrictions and everything, no, I'm actually not for them. I actually think we probably just need to move forward at some point. It's been almost 2 years now, and I think we're all kind of just done with this. So we would just, we'd have to do it case by case. We'd have to look at it, of course, but really it's, me personally, I'm not for much of it other than freedom of choice to do what you want, and as a business owner to require what you need.
Chris?
Just so I'm 100% sure, can you repeat it for me?
Certainly. What is your stance on COVID restrictions? I.e., do you support mandatory vaccines, masks, business closures?
Okay, easiest answer to that is no, I don't support that. And the reason for that is because it falls down to individual responsibility to educate yourself and make the correct decision for you and your family what works. The problem is when we come into, for instance, the business close downs, the automatic shutdowns. We'll take Cattleman's Cafe, who's a great restaurant here, for example. They came very close to running out of business, but JB's restaurant didn't, Albertsons doesn't. This only hurts the small mom and pop shops and the small business owners, which is vital to our community to run, because they depend on those day-to-day sales, that day-to-day customer traffic of coming in and keeping their revenues up so that they can continue to function and provide services for the community. Albertsons, Walmart, they have millions of dollars, so they can sit back and they can weather the storm and something like this where we can't. Now, however, that doesn't mean that Cattleman's Cafe can't choose to shut down if they so choose. It falls to individual responsibility and your individual rights and freedom that are given to you, and unalienable rights that are given to you from the Creator naturally. Government's role is to observe and protect that and understand that. So yes, should the government be making mandates? No, but they should release information to help you make a better judgment for yourself so that you can make an educated and prepared responsible decision on whether you want to wear a mask, you want the jab, or if you want to shut down your business. If a business owner claims that, hey, for my store, it needs to be, you need to wear a mask, once again, that comes to personal choice, not the government stepping into the private sector where it has no business.
So yeah, America is a wonderful place to live because we do have those freedoms of choice. And I believe this is one of those, where if you want to choose to be vaccinated, then you should have the right to do that. And if you choose not to be, then you should have that right also. So I believe in that strongly. And as a small business owner, it's crucial that we have that opportunity to make that choice also for ourselves. Whether, we are going to be open or closed or require masks or whatever it may be, because that, depending, especially on the business and depending on the time of year when you're requiring those, a lot of small business owners, it's not this steady stream, as mentioned with the large retailers, and they're kind of a steady stream. Most small businesses, it's cyclical. You have peaks, you have valleys, you have another peak, you have another valley. And if you hit one of those, say a mandate to close or whatever it may be, and a peak where you rely on that to really carry you forward for the rest of the year, it will affect that and could most likely close that small business. If that happened to us, that we own a small business here in Caldwell, as I mentioned earlier, if we hit one of our peaks on that, we'd probably be gone the next year. And so those are real effects that have, and not just on me and my family, obviously, but then that's a trickle-down effect to the whole community. So having that freedom of choice, that's what makes this land so great, and we need to retain that, protect it, and fight for that.
So I just wanted to do a quick rebuttal, and maybe Jerem can explain explain a little bit more. But before I get to that, I want to say, we actually, with the COVID restrictions, I only want to make it publicly known that we actually need to make sure that we aren't shamed for our choices either. Everyone has a reason for their choices, and whatever that reason is, we shouldn't be divided over those reasonings. It may be free to choose. We may be free to choose, but we shouldn't be free to divide. And then also for Jerem, just to clarify, when we were going to do this meeting, he did ask for an in-person meeting through email with everyone attending wearing masks. So I want him to clarify on that.
Thank you, and I'd love to clarify. So, and that I didn't say that we should require everybody to wear masks. I just said if that was the only option, if it came down to, where the city said, yes, you can use the building, you can have people in it, but only if they wear masks. Sometimes you have to look, is that better than not having the public here at all? And so that's where I was out of that. I'm not saying that they should have to, but if it came down to that, that could be a decision to make, be like, okay, we don't really believe in these mandates, but if the city says that's the only way we can get people there in person, so we'd have this room filled rather than just these two wonderful, lovely ladies here with us, that should be an option that we could look at and try to decide if we wanted to. So that's where I was going with that, was not requiring it, but just if it did come as a requirement of the city, think about that, and maybe we can make a choice on that if that came that way. So thank you for that.
No rebuttal, so you're up, Chris. We're gonna get you up one way or another. This question comes from Paul Webster.
Okay.
What are 2 or 3 things the city should start doing, stop doing, or adjust in order to make Caldwell a great place for kids and families to thrive?
So what are 2 or 3 things that the city should stop doing, start doing, or continue to do, or adjust for families in Caldwell to thrive? Okay, that's what I thought it was. 2 or 3 things. Well, I think 2 or 3 things is we keep on track. We keep maintaining Indian Creek Plaza, obviously, and promoting that, and the safety and the excitement and the entertainment that brings that for families to go. We need expand that, so to improve upon that and make it, like I said earlier, throughout the whole city, so that it's not just Indian Creek Plaza that's exciting. It's also along Blaine Street, or it's along Caldwell Boulevard, those businesses that are on the other side, the opposite side of 10th Street. There are a few businesses over there, getting people drawn in over there to where it's an exciting area that you walk the whole Greenbelt and see these different places. And that's what we need to continue doing. What some things we could adjust is maybe make our priority of focus somewhere else. So instead of the Northern Urban Renewal District, maybe we should focus on across the train tracks, where a lot of dilapidated buildings and areas are over there, and good potential of growth, and making that an extension beyond Indian Creek Plaza, to where now we have 2 great areas, and we're starting to connect and beautify to where you're walking in between both of these areas. It's much closer, it's nicer, and we focus on the downtown, which brings in more revenue, more economy for our residents, more excitement for not even just our residents, but all of the Treasure Valley and Idaho, and hopefully we become a major tourist destination to where it would help out the economy greatly. So, thank you.
Okay, so some of the things that we should start doing as a city. I think, like I said, we've done some great things, the redevelopment of downtown and those things of that nature, but some things that we can definitely start doing better, utilizing technology. I think that, we need to start looking at that way and trying to increase our efficiencies. It's going to be, Mayor Nicholas has done a fantastic job the last 24 years, and where Caldwell was and where we are today. And I know a lot of people that I meet with, ask me the big question they always ask is, how are you going to fill those big shoes? And my response is always, I'd much rather fill big shoes than to fill small shoes, because that means that you're in a good place, things are going great for the city, so you just need to continue that that energy that you have so we continue moving forward. But I agree that there's things we need to do better. And I think, utilizing technology the best that we can to improve our efficiencies in the city is one thing that we can definitely do. Making sure that we're following our own rules. There's a set of city code and ordinances that everybody has to follow. And I think sometimes that, as a city, sometimes we forget we need to follow those rules also. So I think we can look at that and see what can we do better to lead by example rather than just, requiring everybody out there, but we don't do it ourselves. We need to look at that and see where can we do better to lead by example for the citizens and businesses of Caldwell.
Okay, Paul, so you're asking what are 2 to 3 things Caldwell should stop, start, or adjust to get our community to thrive?
Right.
Okay, so I was thinking the most way we could get our community to thrive is we need to seek out kids' activities specifically and make it appealing to come here to Caldwell. And I'm talking about businesses. So we've got like 3 or 4 aerobatic places, like not even just jump time, but Defy Air Sports. We've got Urban Air, all these different places. We need to bring them into Caldwell so we have things here for our kids to do. Sometimes being in Meridian, Boise, they're a little more pricey and sometimes not always affordable for our local families. I would agree with Jerem. Technology, we need technology as well. We need to bring that in, and we need to really get hands-on with our students. I think focusing on your question, I think focusing on the children, and really probably, depending on what it is, the older children, so like the teenagers. But so the technology would be good to bring in. And then really, if we could work with our schools and capitalize on our schools and create like field trips and bring them for the kids who don't have the opportunity to, believe it or not, may have not seen our downtown, may not even know of the plaza, that kind of stuff. Field trips and student activities through the schools, I think, would be ideal.
This question comes from Chuck Stoddard.
Very good.
Okay. What experience do you have with urban renewal policies and how it burdens homeowners' property taxes?
Good. So urban renewal, as we're, I think, mostly all aware of, is so that we have the Caldwell East Urban Renewal District right now. So what that district has done, so it's been in existence for some time now. It is set to expire next year, which it's been a great thing for the city. And with that, I'm excited for it to expire. I think it's ran its course. It did what it was supposed to do, and now we can move forward with the benefits that it's attracted. So what the Caldwell East Urban Renewal District did was help to attract those businesses located out in Sky Ranch Business Park to come to Caldwell. So provided that opportunity to leverage those things so that they would come to Caldwell. Because when a business is looking for a place to go, and especially on some of these, they can look worldwide. And most of them, if not all of them, definitely within the country, where can they go and where's going to be the best fit for them. So being able to attract those businesses through that has been a great thing. Indian Creek Plaza, I think, is another great example of the benefit of the Caldwell East Urban Renewal District, where we're able to build that plaza and get it done in a timely manner so that we can start reaping the benefits today, rather than further down the road. And with that, I still think there's things we could have done better with the Caldwell East Urban Renewal District. I know that there was, I hear a lot from people about monies that were given, to schools and things like that maybe should have gone different directions. And so, when it was used, like for the Indian Creek Plaza, for the Sky Ranch Business Park, I think we've seen great benefits in that. We need to, be careful of as far as, the timelines for those urban renewal districts. There's maximum timelines, but it doesn't mean you always have to follow those, that you could do, a 10-year or whatever it may be. You don't always have to go to the max and see what benefits you can get within that time frame. And if you get the benefit that you were expecting, then sunset it and move on and start reaping the benefits of those taxes that come into the city.
Do me a favor and repeat it one more time, please.
What experience do you have with urban renewal policies and how it burdens homeowners' property taxes?
So Chuck, I don't have any experience with the urban renewal policies other than what I've been learning myself, researching and this and that. I do know that it is a burden on the taxpayers. That's one thing I've heard from a lot of people talking to them. That's been the issue, is what are we going to do with urban renewal? We don't want it renewed. And once I started looking into it, again, it's one of those things, I don't have enough information to comment directly on it, but it is antiquated and it has ran its course. And then it's costly, and I think if we don't renew it come next year, we will see some tax relief on our property taxes.
So yes, the Eastern Urban Renewal is going to expire December 21st, 2022. And when that comes, we will have an influx of tax money that we did not have before, able to flow in the city, the county, and the schools, and everything else. I've already said this before. My experience of it has been, as a homeowner, is to subsidize those that are not paying, that their property taxes do not go to the municipalities and the infrastructure of the city. And a quick breakdown of it is basically you find a plot of land, designated urban renewal, and just for simple math, it's worth $10,000. Once buildings are placed, and so the money, that tax money, property tax money, continues to flow into the county and the city. But once you start putting buildings on it, that property becomes worth a lot more. Now it's worth $500,000. Every increase upon that goes to the urban renewal fund. It does not go into the city to help with the infrastructure, police, fire department, so on and so forth. So the problem that we run into is that if I have a house in the urban renewal district, my taxes aren't paying for what I'm utilizing in the city. It's not paying for the water, it's not paying for the sewer, it's not paying for police, it's not paying for fire, it's not paying for schools, so on and so forth, the employees that work for the city. That has to be made up, and that is made up by those that do not live in urban renewal districts. And so therefore, you can go on the Canyon County website for the county assessor, and he actually breaks it down mathematically how that affects the levy rate, and you can see for yourself how much more of an increase in tax that is on yourself. So this is a burden. We have links to it. It needs to expire. It will expire. We can't extend this one anymore. And then the taxpayers, they need a break. They need to see how much their taxes come down, and let's see if our city continues to thrive without it. When our property taxes are so low and we're more competitive than Nampa, we're more competitive than hopefully Boise and Meridian, even our taxes will be, and companies will naturally want to come here, and then that way we will still grow. And obviously, if that does not continue, we still have the tool to use in the future.
I just wanted to rebuttal on that just a little bit, just because I do know that the urban renewal has a commission as well, and I believe Jerem's a commissioner on that. And I honestly don't, I know that it was appointed by the mayor. That's one of the duties that he does have, but I didn't agree with that. I think that it actually needs to be a citizen role. They need to have their input on it. I know there's meetings for urban renewal and they can come in and talk. I just think it would be more advantageous for the city if we actually had certain qualifications for actual citizens to come in and be on that board.
Okay, we got time for one more question, then we'll go to our closing statements. And Nicole, you're up.
Forgot, sorry.
That's okay. That's
Okay.
It's been a long evening.
Yeah.
What do you intend to do about all the graffiti popping up in our town? Oh my God. And that was from Julie Warwick again.
Spend urban renewal funds? No, just kidding. Graffiti, it is a mess, and it's not good to look at. I think that this would be one opportunity where we could have the community involved. I know I keep saying the community, but really we need them involved. If we want to be a community, a tight-knit community, we need to be involved. And I would get the community involved and really just hit those areas of graffiti hard. We don't want our kids looking at that. We don't want to look at it. Even the kids that that see that all the time, or even maybe even did it. Sometimes you don't realize that some of these kids are pretty young that are doing this stuff. Or they just stole a spray paint can, or they've learned from somebody else at an early age. So we really just need to really come together, awareness, education on graffiti and why it's not good. I know people, oh, it's ugly, but sometimes people just need to be educated on why. So again, the graffiti is not good, and I'm all for getting rid of it through community alliances.
I've noticed that one of the reasons my wife and I picked to live in Caldwell when I retired was the lack of, one, the city didn't look trashy. Two, well, actually the biggest thing was how big Caldwell turned around from when we left here 16 years we were gone. Caldwell was turned around. But we have noticed an influx in graffiti, especially I live over by the hospital. I notice a lot of tagging going on over there lately. And what this needs to be dealt with is, once again, comes down to the law enforcement. And the issue we have is, like I explained it earlier, we have at a time 6, maybe 7 police officers on. And Caldwell is a very, very large city. So they have between 6 officers, calls to make, and leaves them very little time for just driving around for patrols to make sure things are fine. So they're stretched to their limits. And with that is going to need to be looking at the shift changes and how many more officers can we get on when we keep longevity. Is that even going to bring in more officers interested in working for us when we start offering incentives for rank promotions and more responsibility? Getting more feet on the street is the way to combat that. Another one, too, is, once again, it's a responsibility of all of us. This city belongs to all of us. Community watch standards. Maybe in your area, if you're getting a lot of community, reach out to the police department and tell them you're interested in setting up a community watch and how you can go about that. I'm not exactly sure how Caldwell operates with one, but I do. Some police departments will actually provide radios and stuff like that to get you direct contact to the police officers that are currently running around. And that is a way to do it. Organize your neighborhood watches, go around and keep an eye out, and this lets the kids know and the people creating this graffiti that you are out, you're actively looking for it. Helps the police as well, because you can get to them. And until in the future we can get more officers on the street with more of an appearance to keep this from happening, we need to continue what we're doing, working hard, and then citizens working with the local law enforcement.
So I think a big part of that is being proactive. Once graffiti is noticed and reported, that you need to get out there and get it gone as soon as possible. That's one of the biggest ways to stop it from occurring again. Because once it's seen there, it's going to get hit again and again. And so if you have a way to be able to communicate, if somebody sees that, they can call in, and hopefully the day of, you can have somebody that's out there getting rid of it, removing it, because if not, it's just going to continue in that area. So that's one of the biggest and quickest, fastest ways you can start to get rid of it is just being proactive, get out there and get rid of it as quick as you can. Retaining police officers, I think, is huge there. As police officers are on duty more and longer and retained as we want and need in Caldwell, they're going to be able to notice little things that maybe a new officer won't notice in areas, so they can maybe keep an eye on that. Maybe they'll notice something that when your officer didn't, that they could stop something like that. And then also being involved with the schools and the youth, kind of like we talked a lot about, getting out there and being among the youth and getting to know the wonderful police officers that we have and having that relationship with them, I think could be a big help as well.
So I just wanted to a quick note of a rebuttal on that. It's something that we need. When I said we need to educate, for a lot of the new people that are coming and the new people that are coming from out of state, when they came from an area that saw that regularly, they think it's okay. So that's why I said education was important And then also my answer to Chris is what he was saying about the police force and police being able to help with that. I would say yeah, but we probably could implement some kind of volunteer program for the police department with qualified volunteers, ex-police or retired police, or just senior group in general that can actually help with these issues and address these type of things instead of using an actual full force of the police officers that we have.
Any other vote? Okay. Candidates, I forgot to have you draw for closing statements. Do you have any objection to just continuing in order the way we're going? Or do you want me to get up and have you draw now?
I'm fine.
Okay, so Chris, you're up with closing statement. Can we maintain the closing, we're running a little late, so can we hold the closing statement to a maximum of 3 minutes?
Okay, here you go, so I'll fly through this. Okay, first thing, in my closing statements, you know, the biggest thing right now and the biggest problem that I hear from people is increase in property taxes. This needs to be looked at and this needs to be handled through the budget. We can't wait on legislation to do this. One of my opponents claims he wants to keep the tax rate low. Nothing about lowering it, but when you look at it, we've had an increase over the years because of the way the city budget increases, and that's what needs to be looked at. The other problem is look at the candidates that are here tonight. Look at the candidates that are here answering the questions. There's candidates out there that don't have the time to hear from the people they want to work for, and that speaks volumes. Your personal rights. Remember, nobody has constitutional rights. Your rights are inalienable and come from the Creator, and they are yours naturally. And we need a government, and we need a position, a city council, and a mayor that is going to protect that when people come down and try to take that from you. Because if we don't fight for it, you're not going to have it. And the other thing is, the thing with city council and mayoral runs is local residents. And usually, a lot of us, we don't have a whole lot of voting record for you to look back on. So I implore you, look back at individuals' histories. That talks about where they're coming from and the experiences that they made, whether right or wrong, is who built them to who they are today. And gives you a good idea of how things are going to function in the future. Is there change? Yes, people change all the time. But as one of my candidates said, you know, doesn't mean you put them right back into that position. i.e., for example, a drunk that's got 5 years sobriety, you don't celebrate by taking him to a bar. So I just want to say, and today in this scary world where people are worried about their rights, government oversight coming into where it shouldn't be, and the private sector not being able to run, who do you want? Do you want somebody that's going to follow along in those lines and follow the mandates, or somebody that's going to get out in front and say, no, these people have constitutionally protected rights that come from God, and they need to be protected to the fullest ability that we can. Thank you.
Thank you to the Chamber again for putting this on, and I also want to thank both of the candidates that are here tonight. It's been great to be with them and to listen to their answers, and you know, just echoing some of those sentiments that, you know, this is important. This is so important to be here to answer the people's questions, the people that you want to represent, and to just lay it out on the line. And so I'm grateful for them to be here and to be a part of that. I think it's important to remember, you know, what does a mayor do? You know, the mayor the mayor leads the city. My kids actually asked me that question the other day. I had to ponder on it a little bit because obviously I was in the legislature for a few years, and they asked me, you know, Dad, what's the difference between that and between a mayor? And I thought about it, and I told them, you know, it's a world of difference. It is so different. You know, when you're in the legislature, there's some, you know, meetings throughout the year, but you're there part-time. You're there 3 months out of the year. You don't have a staff that you're over and that you're in charge of, your employees. At the city level, at the mayor, you're the CEO of the city. So you have 300 employees that you're over. So I think it's important that you lead those employees, that you have the character to do that, and that's somebody that they can want to follow after. And, you know, employees are so important to any business. You know, as a small business owner, I realize, you know, a lot of my success depends on my employees and how, you know, well that they work in that regards, and how well they don't work can really affect my bottom line. And so the same at the city. You know, you want great employees. You want to give them joy when they come to work, and that they enjoy coming and being there. They're going to be more productive. So I think it's important that we remember that, and that we provide the opportunities for the employees to just flourish and to be the best that they can be. And just being, again, that example, and, you know, the experience that I have, I think, again, Caldwell is at a crossroads with our growth, and just having somebody that understands that, I think, is so important at this time of our development as a city and excited for the future. And I love Caldwell, and I'm excited for the opportunity to help lead it and help us to continue to grow in the path that we want to. And again, just remind you to get out and vote. Early voting is going on. November 2nd is the big day, but you can definitely get out before then, and encourage you to vote for Jerem Wagner for mayor. Thank you.
So I have a bunch of chicken scratch, so I'm going to try to get through it. But I do want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity tonight. I appreciate everyone's understanding that I'm new to this, but also for understanding I'm not out of the race totally. Everyone learns a new career and starts their first day somewhere. Experiences learned and earned, not given. So I want to close with Thomas Paine said, "A body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not to be trusted by anybody." I like this quote. I wanted to use this quote so you can take notice who is here tonight and who isn't. And I really appreciate Jerem and Chris for being here. And please, to the Caldwell citizens, please vote according to what you've heard from us directly and what you didn't get to hear from those who didn't attend. Do we really want someone who can't even take the time to take questions via a live stream tonight? I want open door policies for the residents of Caldwell. I want to meet you, the people. Remember, like I said earlier, you govern us. We just put in place the things we hear from you. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and please vote for Nicole Highland for mayor.
This concludes our mayoral forum. I just want to give a big shout out to all three of you. I am very much appreciative that you abided by strict adherence to your time frames. You were very polite in your civil discourse. There were some disagreements, but you are all exemplary as leaders here in Caldwell in the way you conducted yourself tonight. And I just want to say thank you very much. Good luck.